Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. I've already cleared Naruto, but you let me travel through Douluo. Chapter 1. Lan Ming, Wuhun Tianqingtang, Innate Soul Power Level 7. In Wuhun City, in the square in front of Wuhun Hall, many boys and girls stood in rows, and in the distance, countless people were looking forward to it. The sun was shining brightly, without a cloud in sight, and the air was filled with unspeakable depression and heat. It was like a bad weather. But this still couldn't suppress the excitement and anxiety on those little faces. Today is the day when the younger generations in the Wuhun Hall, who are considered to have great potential, awaken their spirits. Although the children here basically have extremely excellent parents, no one dares to guarantee whether there will be any mutations. After all, there is a well-known blue lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex laughingstock in front, right? No wonder they are nervous. Is it to enter the top level of Tianzhou and be trained by Wuhun Hall, or to lose the halo and fall into the dust? It all depends on this move. Only one person is out of tune with this tense atmosphere. That is a white-haired boy. He was tall and straight, with neatly combed white hair and dark eyes. Standing there, he was taller than his peers and stood out from the crowd. The most important thing was that the awakening of the martial spirit would determine the future. Even the three recognized geniuses were a little nervous. The white-haired boy looked calm and even looked around indifferently. He seemed to be from a different world from the anxious crowd. He listened to the voices on the stage boredly, and his heart had already wandered away. It's really troublesome. How did I end up in the back garden of King Tang? Su Chen sighed. He was not from Douluo continent, but from another world. Naruto. Speaking of which, the Naruto world was not his first world. As a native of Blue Star, he first crossed into the Naruto world after being served by the Mud Truck's time travel package. At that time, it was the 36th year of Konoha, on the eve of the Second Ninja World War. Su Chen also became a contemporary of the three ninjas of Konoha, Orochimaru, Tsunade, and Jiraiya, as well as a close friend. He was Orochimaru's research partner, Jiraiya's pen pal and drinking buddy, Tsunade's gambling buddy, and the person who taught her medical ninjutsu. Su Chen experienced the Second and Third Wars, learned the Flying Thunder God technique, developed the Rasengan and Chidori series, gradually became stronger, and also created a great reputation on the battlefield. Unlike the three ninjas of Konoha, Su Chen was known for his record of killing several Jonins in Iwagakure and Kumogakure, and defeating the AB brothers at the same time, and was revered as Silver Flash. And he also took advantage of the abundant resources and cultivated to the limit of mortals, and was also the strongest at that time. The reputation of Konoha's Silver Flash immediately overwhelmed all countries, and was unrivaled for a while. But Su Chen knew that his half-step super shadow level strength was not enough in this world where bloodline was supreme and eyes were legendary. Without the blood of the Otsutsuki, the Sharingan and the Byakugan, at best he would be at the level of Kai, only blooming for a moment. But Su Chen was not content with this. He began to study soul secrets with Orochimaru, and even gave up the position of Hokage to Minato Namikaze, who was far less experienced than him. Finally, after Naruto and Sasuke were born, Su Chen got the opportunity he had been looking for. He first used the cells and soul fragments of Naruto and Sasuke as the basis, and then supplemented them with the two purest Byakugan bloodlines of Hinata Hyuga and Hanabi, plus the cells of Hashirama Senju, and used cloning technology to create the strongest body. And through this body as a medium, he attracted the chakra of Ashura and Indra, gathered the power of yin and yang, opened the 10,000 things, awakened the 9 Magatama Samsara Eye and the Sage Body, and obtained his unique eye technique, an eye technique that touched the time taboo. Takama ga Hara. After that, with the blessing of the Sage Body and the power of Yang, Su Chen was basically able to open the Death Gate without injury, and treat the Day Tiger and Evening Elephant as a flat attack. But at this point, Su Chen, who was basically invincible in the ninja world, was not satisfied. He integrated the sage arts of the three holy places, created a new perfect sage mode, and learned all the ninjutsu, blood inheritance, forbidden techniques, and sealing techniques. Finally, he arrived on the moon, snatched and absorbed all the pure Otsutsuki blood, and awakened the reincarnation eye. So far, the full-level account has been trained. At that time, Su Chen cosplayed a laughing 4 heroes on the moon, and scared the Six-Path Sage and his brother so much that they dared not say a word. The feeling of being surrounded by crises for decades finally disappeared, and he could finally start to enjoy himself. But just when Su Chen was ready to kick Kagaya, punch Six Paths Madara, and then unify the ninja world and start to enjoy life, a strange and familiar system page suddenly popped up. System energy has been restored. The strongest Douluo system is at your service. Ding. An error has occurred. The current world is not Douluo continent. Start retravel. 3.2.1. Start successfully. Su Chen has not yet reacted to the meaning of this sentence. The next second, he has come to the world of Douluo continent and become the son of a purple-robed cardinal of the Spirit Hall. No, buddy, I have reached the maximum level in the ninja world. You sent me here to practice as a novice. When he came back to his senses from the confusion of becoming a child, Su Chen was dumbfounded at the time. God sees pity. He lived in fear in his previous life, trembling with fear all the way, for fear that he would reveal some flaws and be targeted by Heiju, let alone a girlfriend. He has never even held a woman's hand. The threat of death and the strong crisis pushed him to seize every minute and every second to become stronger, without a single breath. 365 days a year, he practiced and studied, and for decades, he ate the bitter modified high-quality nutritious ration pills day in and day out, getting up earlier than chickens and sleeping later than dogs. It was finally time for him to enjoy the results, but this system suddenly sent him to this broken place and asked him to start all over again. For a few days, Su Chen greeted the ancestors and relatives of the system crazily, and cursed for a whole week. After preparing to cut the soul to force the system out to no avail, he slowly stopped. The system seemed to be scared enough, and except for secretly showing the compensation and data panel, it didn't dare to show its head at all. After a few days in a row, Su Chen was tired. Cursing is scolding. It can't be pure and rotten, right? At worst, when the strength becomes stronger in the future, the system will be materialized and taken out and thrown into a certain world of anime, so that it can also experience the feeling of being used as toilet paper. Then, he began to calm down and think about the current situation in the world. Douluo continent is not unfamiliar to Su Chen. After all, even outsiders have heard of the name of the Tang God King. This Tang God King can be said to have taken the way of death to the extreme. The doorman made things difficult, the way of death. Killing my soul beast, the way of death. Injuring teammates in the arena, the way of death, etc. There are also such as later. When the level is low, I went to the Haoshin sect, I redeemed my father's sins. When the level is high, I went to the Haoshin sect, it was all your fault. What was wrong with my father? Dare to refute. You have the way of death. Wow, this double standard ability is amazing even if it is the T0 version. As for how to torment his son-in-law and daughter later, it goes without saying, it can only be said that it has reached the level of madness. Of course, Tang God King is at most an evil dragon heir, the real cancer, the god realm above the sky, and the god kings. This is also his goal. Only when the gods pass away can we get true freedom. As for the destined protagonist Tang Shenhuang, to be honest, he really doesn't take him seriously. This is the confidence that the strongest in the ninja world brings him. Shaking his head, Su Chen clicked on the system panel that only he could see. Name: Su Chen. Gender: male. Age: 6 years old. Realm: level 10, Soul Warrior, Soul Master after obtaining Soul Ring. Life Energy: 1200, Standard Soul Master 100 to 500. Spirit Energy: 300, Spiritual Communication Realm, Standard Soul Master is Spiritual Yuan Realm 0 to 50. Soul Power Chakra 1000, Standard Soul Master 100 to 800. External Soul Bone. Sharingan Single Magatama improves nerve reaction speed, dynamic detection, can release illusions through line of sight intersection, white eyes, perspective, 360 degrees no dead angle detection, far-sighted 1 kilometer. Features: Perfect Sage Body 10%, your self-healing ability is enhanced, your physical recovery speed is enhanced, your vitality is enhanced, your affinity with nature is enhanced, your cultivation talent is improved, and your cultivation speed in Sage mode is improved. The ancestor of pupil techniques, you can use all pupil techniques without restrictions, and you need the Mangekyo Sharingan, Eternal Mangekyo Rinnegan Kamui unusable, Amaterasu unusable, Tsukuyomi unusable. Available skills: Su Chen style sword technique, Su-Chen Style Shuriken Technique, Su-Chen Fluid Technique. There is nothing to say about pupil techniques and physique, and that feature is the compensation of the system, and it also gives the sage body a new feature. In view of this, Su-Chen gave up the idea of whether to start studying the soul directly, and find a way to find the system and then peel it off. The system trembles.jpg. As long as it can develop safely to the later stage, I will also use Tang Shenhuang to make a moon for the Douluo world to play with. Juliana, Spirit Fox, Innate Spirit Power, Level 9.5. The noisy voice in the field woke Su-Chen from his meditation. He raised his eyes and looked at the restless crowd and the pink-haired girl on the awakening stage. A charming fox spirit shadow hovered above her, adding a charming look to the girl. Even though she was still young, she could still see the shadow of the charming people in the future. It's actually innate level 9.5 spirit power. Is this the highest today? Level 9.5, it seems that she is the next generation of Saint of the Spirit Hall. Top Beast Spirit, plus level 9.5 spirit power, my goodness, this child may be the next pope soon. Maybe, this child can achieve the strength of a titled Douluo before the age of 35. The Spirit Hall is booming. The voices of amazement and a little jealousy in the distance did not escape Su-Chen's ears, and he pouted secretly. What's the point of becoming a titled Douluo at the age of 35? That's because you haven't seen a wall hanging who became a god at the age of 25. Next, Su-Chen. After an unknown amount of time, the commotion was finally calmed down by the interference of the awakening elders, and Su-Chen also heard his own name. Compared to Juliana, this name seemed much more unfamiliar, but Su-Chen's height, which was much taller than others, still attracted the attention of many people. The white-haired boy walked onto the stage slowly and put his hand directly on the crystal ball. But after a long while, the crystal ball had no reaction. Huh, it's been used too many times, is it broken? The awakening elder frowned and reached out to check. Crack, a clear cracking sound rang out in the square, and the awakened elder's face suddenly changed color, staring at the crystal ball that suddenly cracked into countless cracks with wide eyes. The next second, bang, the crystal ball exploded. A clear shattering sound resounded throughout the venue. Under the gaze of countless people, the crystal ball that the white-haired boy put his hand on exploded and shattered into debris on the ground. The nearest awakening elder took 2 steps back in shock. At the moment just now, he felt an extremely powerful energy wave sweeping through him, and the soul power in his body seemed to be squeezed by something and could not be mobilized at all, as if the wild beasts were suppressed by the upper natural enemy. But how is this possible? Seeing that everyone present looked over in surprise, the awakening elder wiped the cold sweat from his head without a trace, and the look he gave Su-Chen was no longer that indifferent but rather a little doubtful. It should be that the crystal ball is broken, right? After all, so many people have been tested. He comforted himself in this way, but he also knew that this possibility was not high. In this kind of occasion, everything is made and inspected to the highest standards. Try this. The awakening elder took out a new crystal ball. Compared with the original one, the texture of this crystal ball looked more transparent, as if it was a higher level detection tool. Su-Chen nodded slightly and put his hand on it again. Buzz. The invisible light sound suddenly sounded, and the dazzling brilliance bloomed from the crystal ball, covering the entire awakening platform. It was like another sun. The strong light was so dazzling that even those outside the venue felt that it was dazzling and could not be looked at directly. What is that? The boys and girls in the front row screamed and covered their eyes, and the people watching outside the venue also exclaimed, looking at the awakening platform that was already bathed in the ocean of light in surprise. However, this was just a prelude. Boom! The violent storm cyclone began to roll from the awakening platform, and the extremely huge phantom slowly spread from the dazzling white light, turning into a rich energy that enveloped the entire venue. The huge cyclone rotated slowly, making everyone's clothes rustle, and their hair rolled like real energy. The soul power in their bodies was like a beast encountering a natural enemy, shivering in vigilance and fear. In contrast, the flowers, plants and trees in the field danced gently, stretching their branches and flowers, as if they were full of nectar, swaying with the wind, and cheering silently. Of course, this did not attract many people's attention. They looked at the huge, light cocoon, in the center with great horror, and their hearts were terrified. What kind of martial spirit did this boy awaken? The crowd was in a state of uncertainty, but Su Chen, the protagonist, felt extremely comfortable. At this moment, his limbs, 7 meridians and 8 channels were soaked and wrapped in the abundant chakra. Whether it was the strength of the body, the soul or even the speed of nerve reaction, they were all rising rapidly, and the slight damage to the body caused by years of rigorous training disappeared. Su Chen clenched his fists and squinted his eyes in enjoyment. This feeling of full power made him feel somewhat familiar with his previous life. Although his current power is not 1/1,000,000th of that in the Naruto world, Su Chen can feel that as long as he continues, he will definitely become stronger than in his previous life. Thinking of something, the young man's mind moved. Buzz! A ball of tangible but insubstantial energy emerged in his hand, constantly changing various shapes. Looking at the familiar energy ball, Su Chen's mouth curled up. Sure enough, it was as expected. His martial soul is chakra. A completely different energy system from soul power, the only one in the world. 3-body technique, shadow clone, Rasengan, flying thunder god technique. Thinking of these ninjutsu that shine in the Naruto world and do not require any nature changes, Su Chen couldn't help but feel hot in his heart. Moreover, with chakra, his research can go further. However, it seems that it is not possible to use it now. He tried to make a seal with one hand, and the chakra in his body was mobilized, but he didn't know what obstacle he encountered in the last step, and it quietly dissipated. Is it because of the gap between the chakra and soul power system, or because of the lack of soul rings? The boy frowned slightly, but he also felt that the two were not completely independent, but had a certain connection. The specific situation still needs to get the first soul ring and officially become a soul master to know. After the initial feeling, Su Chen clenched his fists with satisfaction and opened his eyes, but found that countless pairs of eyes were looking at him as if he were a monster. The boys and girls staggered to the left and right, and the awakening elder in front of him was even holding his head and shaking. The worst was Juliana, who had not walked far. Because of curiosity, she stopped and even walked 2 steps. Without the strength of the awakening elder, her delicate little face was as pale as paper, and she fell not far from Su Chen. What are you doing? The boy helped the awakening elder a little strangely, and then picked up Juliana. With a thought, a stream of chakra was injected into her body. Juliana moaned softly with a pale face, and the color returned to her little face. Her long eyelashes fluttered, and her beautiful eyes opened, and she saw the white-haired boy looking at her with concern. How do you feel? The boy asked softly. Juliana was stunned for a moment, and struggled down with a blushing face, her voice as thin as a mosquito's hum. I'm fine. Su Chen looked at the girl who blushed and lowered her head speechlessly. Who asked you if you were okay? I asked you how it felt when the chakra entered your body. But even if she didn't cooperate much, Su Chen realized that his chakra seemed to have a suppressive effect on soul power, which could be removed by chakra. He kept this in mind, maybe it would be effective in the future. At this time, the awakened elder who had recovered finally remembered his duties. He shook his head and grabbed Su Chen with excitement. Innate full soul power, you are innate full soul power. No wonder he was so excited. Within one day, first the 9.5 level soul power appeared, and then the innate full soul power appeared. This is simply unique in his lifetime of awakening. Moreover, it is this kind of martial soul that can cause such a big reaction even though it is unknown. It is almost foreseeable that if this young man does not die, he will definitely be the mainstay of the martial soul hall in the future. You must know that when the saint girl and the current pope awakened their martial souls, there was no such terrible vision. But excitement is excitement, and awakening must continue. Although in his heart, the ceremony was over, and he had even thought about what kind of reward the pope would give him after the event. Let Su Chen help Juliana, who was still a little weak, down, and look at the backs of the two. The awakening elder's eyes were burning. These 2 children will definitely become great figures in the future. Next, he shouted with full energy. Su Chen asked a few more questions about the feeling of chakra, but he didn't know what the little girl had misunderstood again. Her little face was red again and again, which made him quite speechless. Of course, the boy didn't notice that among the boys and girls who collapsed on the ground, there was a red-haired figure who clenched his fists tightly. There were not many subsequent awakenings, but of course there were also many good ones, including one with an innate level 9.5 soul power. Huliena's brother Xie Yu. It was just that because of Huliena's example and Su Chen's dominance, everyone was a little desensitized. A genius with an innate level of 9.5 that is rarely seen in a century could not cause any big waves in their hearts. And the few people at level 7 and 8 were even worse, and basically no one discussed them. This made a certain red-haired boy even more indignant, especially after seeing that a certain girl's eyes had never left Su Chen. He clenched his fists even tighter. When Su Chen came out, the crowd outside the venue was still talking enthusiastically, and the content was nothing more than him, Xie Yu, and Huliena, as well as speculation about his martial soul. He ignored those pairs of fiery eyes and looked for something, but the next moment, the boy's brows frowned. Achin is my son, Su Xiao. How can I not know him? The middle-aged man with white hair looked at the people in front of him angrily. Just brag. How old are you to be a soul king? Can you give birth to such a son? Several people looked at him with contempt. Don't dream. He must be the son of an elder in the elder hall. If he is your son, I will call you Dad. Dad. The white-haired boy pushed the crowd and glanced at the man indifferently, ignoring the latter's liver-colored face, then bowed slightly, and looked at the middle-aged man with a soft look. At first, Su Chen was a little resistant to this cheap father. After all, as an orphan of 2 lives, no one has ever been so meticulous and caring for him. It was the middle-aged man in front of him who went through so much hardship to awaken in the Wuhun Hall, using the promises and promotion opportunities of his father's generation, just because he believed that his son could make a big splash, be appreciated by the top leaders, and get a better education. It is hard to describe how much ridicule and abuse he has received here. When he came to the young man, he was all smiling. In the eyes of Su Chen, who was used to maximizing his interests, this was a very stupid behavior. But the person who did this was all for him. In this case, how could it not move people? The middle-aged man nodded excitedly. They rushed all the way from the marginal city. Su Xiao had not slept well these days. Now that his martial soul has awakened, he felt relieved. If he was not a soul king, he would have been lying on the ground long ago. His son is really a genius. The first in the Su family with full innate soul power in generations. Really. Thinking about it, Su Xiao's nose was sour and his eyes were a little dry. Can't cry, can't embarrass my son will become a titled Douluo in the future. Seeing that Su Xiao had basically reached the limit of his body and needed to rest and eat, Su Chen was too lazy to argue with that person. And that person also realized that he was a clown, and dragged his companion away in shame. Just as the two were about to leave under the gaze of the crowd, a childish shout suddenly sounded. Su Chen, wait a minute. The red-haired boy blocked Su Chen's path with a fierce momentum, raised his fist, and stared at him. Hey, do you dare to fight with me? The sudden movement attracted the attention of the girls and boys who came out one after another, and they all looked over with some curiosity. The blonde girl hurried out, and her beautiful eyes lit up when she saw Su Chen. Just when she wanted to say something to him, she saw the red-haired boy blocking Su Chen's way. She thought about it and understood something. She frowned and said angrily, Yan. Quote. Then, she turned around with a headache and said apologetically, Su Chen, I'm sorry, he may not be sober today. Quote. The white-haired boy nodded, and kept walking. He knew about the dispute between Yan and Huliena in the original book, and he could understand why Yan stopped him. But Su Chen was not interested in getting involved in the dispute between these half-grown children. You coward, don't you dare. However, Yan, who was angry, didn't want Su Chen to just leave, especially Huliena's attitude that was completely different from that of another person, which made him jealous. He gritted his teeth and stopped Su Chen, if you don't dare, you. Quote. The red-haired boy's words came to an abrupt end. Because at some point, a strange-looking dagger had been placed across his neck. Yan swallowed hard. The cold metal and the sharp stinging pain gave him goosebumps on his neck. His calves trembled as he looked at the indifference in the dark pupils of the white-haired boy. This guy has killed people, killed many people. Yan has seen such eyes, and the soul masters who retreated from the battlefield in the spirit hall have also had such eyes. But compared to Su Chen, they still have emotional fluctuations that can be called human. But the white-haired boy in front of him did not. Get out of the way. Quote, subconsciously following Su Chen's words, he stepped aside, and the dagger on his neck disappeared instantly. Yan gasped for breath and looked at the backs of the two people in fear. That guy. Things happened too quickly, and before everyone could react, Su Chen had already walked away. No one expected Su Chen to use weapons without hesitation, and no one understood when he took out the weapons. The boys and girls swallowed their saliva and looked at each other. They made up their minds at the same time that they must not provoke Su Chen easily. Juliana looked at Su Chen's back absent-mindedly, took a breath slowly, and looked at Yan angrily. If you affect others because of this kind of thing again, we will no longer be friends. No, Yan wanted to say something aggrieved, but Juliana didn't give him a chance to speak, and turned and left, leaving behind only a sad and distressed figure. And all this was seen by several pairs of eyes and reported to someone. 1 innate full soul power, 2 level 9.5, and several level 7 or above. It's really amazing. The lazy and cold voice echoed in the empty hall, and the awakened elders and several others stood respectfully below, not daring to look at the beautiful figure on the stage. Congratulations, His Holiness. These children will definitely be the backbone of the Spirit Hall in the next 10 years. Whether it is Su Chen, Xie Yu, Juliana, or Yan, they are all excellent talents. Especially Su Chen. Not only does he have full innate spirit power, but he also has a strange spirit that can suppress our spirit power a little abnormally. If he is well trained, his future achievements may be. The awakening elder thought for a while and affirmed, the lowest achievement will not be lower than the worshippers in the worship hall. Humph, he has good talent, but his heart is too cruel. He threatened his life just for a quarrel. He is brave and aggressive. I am afraid his future achievements will not be too high. One person objected. He had a good impression of Yan, so naturally, he had a bad impression of Su Chen. That's wrong. The Soul Master world is a world of the jungle. It's not a game of playing house. Those who are indecisive have died long ago. I like this child's character very much. Not right. I think that girl is good, and Xie Yu. Several people in the hall started arguing. Okay. Just the next second, a cold and lazy voice sounded, and two words instantly overwhelmed all the voices. The strong momentum suppressed the scene, and everyone was silent, and there were turbulent waves in their hearts. I didn't expect that the strength of His Highness the Pope would increase again. How old is she? Ju Douluo, Ghost Douluo, the two of you, take a few little geniuses to the Stardo Great Forest in a week, and you go down too. I will obey the Pope's orders. A gentle and ethereal voice sounded. When everyone left, only that beautiful figure was left in the empty hall. Su Chen. The slender jade finger moved on a portrait, gently drawing an arc, and the beautiful eyes met the dark eyes under the white hair. It's really interesting. The Spirit Hall's response speed was obviously very fast. Before Su Chen and Su Xiao returned to the hotel in Spirit City, someone came to contact them and led them to a rather elegant courtyard. Please rest here with the purple-robed cardinal. Tomorrow someone will naturally arrange the rest for you. The white-robed deacon bowed respectfully to Su Chen and Su Xiao in turn, and stretched out his hand to open the door of the courtyard for them. The utensils for bathing and changing clothes are ready, and the food will be delivered soon. The flowers, plants and trees in the courtyard are lush and prosperous, and the decoration is obviously the work of a master. The air is also filled with elegant fragrance. A light sniff makes you feel relaxed and happy. Su Chen nodded gently. He was quite satisfied with the arrangement of the Spirit Hall, regardless of the speed or attitude. Institutions like this have long understood the talents of those who participate in the awakening of the spirit, and the means to win people's hearts are naturally prepared in advance. But his name is definitely not here. Even so, in the short 15 minutes between his conflict with Yan and his coming out with Su Xiao, the Spirit Hall had arranged everything he needed at the moment. Su Chen really couldn't find any fault with this attitude. It can only be said that if it weren't for the protagonist halo of Tang Shenwang, it would be absurd to say that the Spirit Hall could be destroyed with this attitude towards talents. Thank you for your trouble. Compared with Su Chen's indifference, Su Xiao was a little flattered. How could he, who came from a small place, have seen such a scene? He rubbed his hands a little awkwardly, then took out a small bag and quietly handed it to the white-clothed deacon, a little gift, buy some wine and drinks. However, This move scared the white-clothed deacon enough. He hurriedly stepped back, waved his hands frantically, and said with a bitter smile, "Don't dare, this is what should be done. You, just call me if you have something, I'll wait outside. Dare to accept this. Can you accept this? Your son is born with full soul power. As long as he doesn't die in the future, becoming a soul Douluo or a titled Douluo is a sure thing. At the very least, he will be an elder of the Elder Hall. If I accept this, what if he holds a grudge against me? Will I still be alive?" The white-clothed deacon looked at Su Chen respectfully and hurriedly withdrew. "I didn't expect that one day I would be able to benefit from my son." Su Xiao was quite emotional. Whether it was this luxurious courtyard or the completely different attitude of the white-clothed deacon, it was all because of the terrifying talent shown by his son. The food was delivered quickly, with both meat and vegetables, and the combination was even. It couldn't be said to be very rich, but it was exquisite. Anyway, both of them were very satisfied. After eating and drinking, the father and son washed up, and couldn't resist the fatigue anymore, and hurriedly fell asleep. The next morning, the Wuhun Hall brought a batch of materials for practice and informed him of the next arrangements. The Spirit Hall also attaches great importance to these geniuses and decided to spend a week to help them consolidate their bodies first. It would be best if they could raise both 9.5 to level 10 at the same time, and then go to the Stardo Great Forest to hunt for the first soul ring together. Su Chen had no objection to this. Although he also wanted to get the first soul ring as soon as possible to explore the secrets of his own martial soul, he also knew that the arrangement of the Spirit Hall would be beneficial to him. Taking this opportunity, he just studied the cultivation method of this world. Su Chen ate the pills that moisturized his body and eliminated impurities, and flipped through the booklet in his hand. That was the basic cultivation method of soul power, the absorption method, also known as meditation. The operating principle is to transform the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and then wander through the 7 meridians and 8 vessels, and after a circle, they will be completely transformed into soul power. This is exactly the opposite of the way of practicing chakra. Chakra is a mixture of spiritual life energy produced by extracting 130 trillion cells in the human body, while soul power is the transformation or absorption of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. It can be said that the two are completely unrelated. But the current situation is that the two are very harmoniously combined together, and chakra, in the form of martial soul, coexists perfectly with soul power. In this case, can they be transformed into each other, so that soul power can be improved through internal cultivation, and chakra can be improved through meditation? If it is feasible, wouldn't it double the progress of cultivation? Su Chen's eyes lit up and he began to try. The process was a bit bumpy. When night fell, the sweaty boy suddenly opened his dark eyes and raised his mouth with joy. Success. As expected, it is completely feasible to extract chakra and absorb soul power through meditation at the same time. Of course, the subtle operation between them is also quite difficult. Su Chen spent another whole day to make this unique cultivation method run perfectly in his body. 7 days passed quickly while Su Chen was immersed in cultivation. Exhaling a breath of turbid air, the boy slowly opened his eyes, and the momentary light flashed, as bright as a star. Not bad. Su Chen clenched his fist and nodded. There is definitely room for improvement, but he can only continue to study after he becomes a formal soul master. After changing his clothes and washing up, Su Chen came to the main square of the Spirit Hall. Compared to the crowds a few days ago, the main square is now deserted. The white-haired boy saw several familiar people at a glance. Xie Yu, Yan, Juliana, and a little girl who was not very impressive. Seeing Su Chen coming, Yan's face instantly became a little ugly, and he snorted coldly and turned his face away. If it weren't for his legs shaking, this scene would definitely be quite courageous. Su Chen naturally didn't bother to pay attention to him. After greeting Xiaoyu, Juliana and others in turn, he stood quietly aside. During this period, Juliana seemed to want to talk to him, but seeing that Su Chen seemed to be thinking, she knew not to interrupt. It seems that everyone is here. A sudden voice suddenly sounded behind them, and several people felt that their eyes were blurred, and 2 figures appeared in their sight. One of them seemed to be smoke without substance, but strangely formed a human figure, as if covered with a layer of torn black cloth, and his face could not be seen clearly. The other was a handsome man with blonde hair, tall and elegant, but the lingering femininity on his face destroyed the original beauty. The aura of the two people was like a deep sea, and even looking at them, the powerful perception of the immortal body brought extreme warning. As this, Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo. Bibi Dong even sent these two. Su Chen was slightly surprised. He had thought about the importance of the spirit hall to them, but he didn't expect it to be to this extent. It is like using an anti-aircraft gun to kill a mosquito for a titled Douluo to help a level 10 soul master to hunt soul rings. But for him, it is not a bad thing. A popular person like this around Bibi Dong is just convenient for him to carry out some plans. The young man pondered slightly. Some methods can be shown in advance. Wuhun Hall, in front of the square. We've all seen it. Ju Douluo's somewhat feminine eyes swept over Xie Yu and the others, and then stopped on Su Chen, his eyes brightening. Hey, have you made so much progress? As soon as the flowers appeared in front of his eyes, a faint fragrance of chrysanthemums poured into the boy's nostrils. The feminine face had already come to him, looking at Su Chen with curiosity and inquiry. Su Chen's whole body tensed up instinctively, and his muscles instinctively mobilized. The kunai slipped out of his sleeves, and chakra surged around him. He subconsciously wanted to stab Yugon's neck directly. But at the last moment, he held back forcefully. Calm down, this is not a dangerous ninja world, and Kiku Douluo is not an enemy. Moreover, with his current strength, the gap between him and the world's top combat power is still too big. Oh, what a scary little guy. Yu Guan's expression remained unchanged, but his eyes narrowed slightly. With his strength, he could understand Su Chen's movements in an instant, but with those black eyes staring at the vital part of his neck, Yu Guan actually felt as if he was being targeted by a beast. It seemed that at any moment, a bloody mouth would bite his neck with fangs. This kid is so wary and murderous. Moreover, progress is so rapid. Compared with 7 days ago, Su Chen's soul power intensity has increased by at least 30%. I am afraid that as soon as he obtains the soul ring, he will directly jump to the 13th level. After looking at the others, the best performer was Xie Yu, who only increased by less than 10%. Of course, this was already a very fast rate. But compared to this little monster, it seems a bit unattractive. There is also a gap between geniuses. Patting his shoulder, Yu Guan showed a smile on his face and turned his gaze to Juliana and others. Little guys, if nothing else goes wrong, you are the 5 most talented people in this session of Wuhun Hall. Probably in the next 10 years, there won't be anyone stronger than you. Ju Douluo was not stingy with his praise, and several people who heard this immediately straightened their backs. Even the cool Xie Yu and Juliana were blushing at this time. Yan even wanted to push his nose up to the sky. Ju Douluo is not as famous as Ghost Douluo. On the contrary, his popularity in Wuhun Hall is not low. Such recognition by a senior who is also famous in Douluo continent made several people very excited. Of course, this does not include Su Chen. But Ju Douluo changed the subject and became serious. Talent can only make you faster and higher than others, but it does not guarantee that you will go further. So, your primary goal is not to become stronger, but to keep yourself alive. Seeing that everyone stopped what he said, Yu Guan nodded with satisfaction. Without further ado, let's set off. I hope that after you come back, you can meet His Majesty the Pope as a soul master. The Stardo Forest is not close to Wuhun City, and there were a few children with poor physical abilities to take care of. It took a few days to reach the largest forest on the continent. After a long journey, except for Su Chen, the other little ones were not in good condition, but Ju Douluo obviously had no intention of asking them to repair them. Okay, geniuses, this is the outermost part of the Stardo Forest. Whatever soul rings you need and what soul rings you get, you have to work hard on your own. Of course, if you can't hold on, you can call me over in tears. Ju Douluo looked at the dusty people with a smile, left such words and then disappeared, leaving only a few people looking at each other. Do we need to face the soul beast ourselves? The little girl at the back had a sad face and a trembling voice. Facing the deep and deep forest, even if she knew this was the outskirts, she couldn't help but tremble all over. How about we form a team? Lord Tsukishiki didn't stop this, did he? Yan also said with some anxiety. He was originally full of enthusiasm, but after seeing this extremely large and deep forest, he was suddenly poured cold water on him. Especially the shrill screams that came from nowhere made him shiver. Incredibly stupid. Su Chen shook his head and waved his hands. I'll leave first, you can do what you want. Yugon's arrangement was expected and in line with his wishes. Hey, what are you talking about? Yan was furious and just about to rush forward, but saw Xieyu and Juliana looking at him speechlessly. What's wrong, am I right? He looked at the two of them in disbelief. Xieyu ignored him, glanced at Su Chen's back, and walked in the opposite direction. Juliana sighed, shook her head and walked to the other side. Hey, you should tell me. Yan stamped his feet frantically. Riddler, get out of the spirit hall, you. This kid is really. In the darkness, Yu Guan looked at the incompetent and furious Yan, and shook his head in disappointment. The talent is good, but he is too impulsive, and his brain is too stupid. Couldn't he know that these little cubs would die if they encountered a 10-year-old soul beast? The reason for arranging individual actions is to customize soul beasts for each person according to their style and ability, and take a look at their performance. But everyone else is pretty good. Douluo looked at the others who started to take action with admiration. Oh, this kid is a bit unlucky. A sinister voice came from Yu Guan. Ghost Douluo floated in the air, looking at the distance with interest. His eyes penetrated the jungle and locked onto the white-haired boy. There is a big guy in that position. Crack, the sound of the dead branches under his feet made a crisp sound. The white-haired boy carefully used the kunai to cut the branches in front of him and walked forward slowly. The faint sense of peeping from behind made Su Chen feel something. There was no need to think that it must be Douluo who was always paying attention to them. After all, apart from him, if they really let them hunt soul beasts by themselves, it would be pure suicide. It's just right. I want to try it too. My current level. Buzz. The milky white energy surged in the boy's body. In an instant, the boy's eyes turned into a white color like jade. White eyes, open. The white eyes from the Hyuga clan in the Naruto world have the ability of farsightedness, perspective, and 360-degree vision without blind spots. It can be called a reconnaissance skill. In a moment, Su Chen's mouth curled up slightly, and he suddenly accelerated in a certain direction. Did that kid encounter that 50-year-old soul beast? Is he running away in a panic now? Ha 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 ha, it should be rare to see a genius in such a mess when he was a child. Douluo shook a chrysanthemum and lay lazily on the tree. But the expected answer did not come. He turned his head in confusion, but found that the corners of his old friend's mouth under the mask were twitching constantly. What's wrong? Yu Guan raised his eyebrows. That kid, he can't be so scared that his legs are weak, right? No. Ghost Douluo shook his head. He took the initiative to rush towards the 50-year-old soul beast. Douluo was stunned for a moment, threw away the chrysanthemum in his hand, and the corners of his mouth twitched uncontrollably. After a long while, he managed to utter a word. He is really a newborn calf who is not afraid of tigers. He doesn't think that soul beasts are like Yan, and can be threatened with a dagger, right? A 50-year-old soul beast is difficult for most soul masters to deal with. What's more, this 50-year-old soul beast is not an ordinary soul beast. Even some low-level great soul masters may die. How do you say, do you want to help him? Ghost Douluo asked while paying attention to Su Chen. Let him suffer a little and break a few bones first. Yu Guan waved his hand unhappily. Let this kid know that the soul beast forest is not a game, but don't go too far, it will be bad if he leaves hidden injuries. He squinted and smiled, as if he had seen Su Chen trembling in fear, and then he and others descended from the sky and killed the soul beast instantly with thunder. I guess this kid will be shocked by the title Douluo, right? Old Ghost, how long do you think that kid will hold on before asking for help? I guess Old Ghost, Old Ghost. After not getting a response from his old friend for a long time, Yu Guan looked up in confusion, only to find that Ghost Douluo had opened his mouth wide at some point, looking like he had seen a ghost. Although it is very abstract to say that Ghost Douluo's face looks like he had seen a ghost, Yu Guan said that he had never seen such an expression in front of his old friend. Hey, you won't let that kid die, will you? Douluo turned over and sat up, and was shocked and looked over quickly. Then, His mouth slowly opened, and the same expression as Ghost Douluo appeared on his face. This is not right. Bang! The thick tree trunk was violently broken, and the debris flew everywhere, hitting the tree with a crackling sound. The remaining branches continued to move forward, breaking 2 large trees before stopping. This area was already in a mess. Roar! A 3-meter-tall silver gorilla roared angrily, pounding its chest, and staring at the front with blood-red eyes. In its pupils, a small silver-haired figure was reflected. It was Su Chen. Are you angry? The young man stood nimbly on the tree branch, his silver hair blown up by the air wave, revealing the blood-red eyes underneath. The single magatama in the eyes slowly turned, exuding a strong ominous aura, firmly locking the gorilla's actions. Sharingan. In the Naruto world, the exclusive bloodline of the Uchiha clan has the ability to improve dynamic vision, nerve reflexes, and release illusions. Roar, roar, roar. The gorilla roared wildly, pounded the ground with both hands, rushed over, grabbed a stone and threw it at Su Chen with all his strength, making a sound like a cannonball breaking through the air. The silver-haired boy was neither hurried nor slow. In his eyes, the speed of the stone slowed down for a moment, and this moment was enough for him to analyze the flight trajectory and the angle of avoidance. Bang! Another big tree was pierced through, and the boy disappeared. The gorilla was panting heavily. The continuous high-frequency attacks also consumed its physical strength and soul power to a great extent, and it was even in danger of being attacked. But it doesn't matter, as long as that hateful human, as long as that. Are you tired? A breeze-like voice came from behind, and the silverback gorilla widened his eyes and looked at the unharmed silver-haired little man in disbelief. The latter was hanging upside down on the tree, looking at it with a smile, and the magatama in his blood-red eyes made it a little scared. Then it's my turn to attack. The silver-haired boy's smile remained unchanged, but the magatama in his blood-red eyes suddenly accelerated and turned. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A sharp sound of breaking through the air rang out, and countless kunai flashing with cold light attacked from all directions, all stabbing at the eyes, mouth, nose, and ears of the silverback gorilla, which had low defense. The latter quickly turned his back and squatted with his head in his arms, but several kunai collided with each other in the air, then drew an incredible arc, bypassed the gorilla's back, and still pierced its ears. Roar! The silverback gorilla howled miserably, covering his ears and slapping them randomly. The blood and severe pain completely aroused the silverback gorilla's ferocity, and began to attack indiscriminately. Trees were broken, mud was flying, and broken stones and wood blocks destroyed everything around with terrible impact. But a silver figure was like a light feather swimming fish, flexibly shuttling through the jungle, whether it was a tree branch or a gravel, it was jumping as if walking on flat ground, and from time to time threw one kunai after another, adding a few more blood marks to the silverback gorilla's body. After an unknown amount of time, the violent silverback gorilla finally stopped slowly and collapsed to the ground helplessly. At this moment, it looked extremely miserable. Blood was pouring from its body, one eye was completely blind, and its ears, mouth and nose were covered with hideous wounds. Even if it survived today, it would not survive the next day in this terrible state in the Stardew Great Forest. Snap! The light landing sound attracted the attention of the silverback gorilla. It raised its eyes despite the severe pain and saw the silver-haired boy who made him extremely angry standing in front of it, walking towards it with a smile. Human Soul Master. A trace of resentment flashed in the only remaining eye of the silverback gorilla. Roar! Just when Su Chen took another step forward, the gorilla, who was just dying, suddenly jumped up and rushed towards him. Die! Die! Seeing that the boy seemed to be frightened and did not dodge, the silverback gorilla showed a trace of human pleasure on his face, opened his bloody mouth, and tried to bite his head off. But the next second, its figure suddenly stopped. Bang bang bang! Roar ah ah ah! Dense blood flowers burst out of its body, and the silverback gorilla let out a shrill and extremely miserable howl, twisting its body in pain. Countless blood-colored steel wires cut deeply into its body, tying it up tightly and unable to move. Maybe it would not take such things seriously at ordinary times, but at this moment, it became the last straw to harvest life. Su Chen walked forward slowly, raised the kunai, and stabbed it into the gorilla's head along the ear. Roar! The unwilling and shrill roar stopped abruptly, and the boy continued to move and stabbed the heart several times. As a white ring with a faint yellow light floated up, he stopped the kunai in his hand. It's been a long time since I used such a basic thing to fight. The boy recalled the process just now with some emotion. Steel wire, kunai, shurikens. Even in the ninja world, it was a very long memory. Jiraiya, because of his shuriken throwing, he suspected that he was a Uchiha more than once. Shaking his head, he threw away some disappointment and focused his eyes on the present. Is this the soul ring? Su Chen looked at the ring with strange patterns engraved on it curiously. He touched it lightly with his hand, but didn't feel anything. Special energy aggregation. It's like compressing energy into a circle, but mixed with something different from soul power. Is it soul energy? It seems that more samples are needed, preferably 100-year or 1,000-year soul beasts. Su Chen thought to himself. Recording the pattern, ignoring the faint attraction from the soul ring, Su Chen cleaned up the venue and turned to leave. He didn't care about a 10-year soul ring. The young man left in a chic manner, but he didn't know that he had completely shocked someone who was watching secretly. When the white-haired figure disappeared into the jungle, Douluo and Ghost Douluo had not yet returned to normal. There was silence in the place where the two of them were, both of them keeping their big mouths open in disbelief. They thought about many possibilities, such as Su Chen being injured and running away. Su Chen could hold on longer, but there was no such possibility of killing the soul beast. This is a 50-year-old soul beast. He is still the type with extremely strong power, and the soul skills he possesses also strengthen himself. If he is not careful, even a great soul master will be devastated on the spot. It's nothing to a titled Douluo, but it's enough to kill these little cubs without blinking an eye. But such a powerful enemy that was absolutely fatal to Su Chen was killed by that kid. Just die. After a long time, Yu Guan looked at his old friend stupidly and pointed at the mess. Just like that, killed with a dagger and some wire. Did I see it wrong? Or is it actually not a spirit beast, but an ordinary beast? As a titled Douluo, he has seen a lot, but this is the first time he has seen this kind of scene. It was like a little white rabbit suddenly killing a tiger. Yu Guan didn't know whether the tiger was confused or not, but he was really confused now. Through provocation, the silverback gorilla is forced to be in a state of rage and constantly use soul skills, which consumes a lot of physical energy. Ghost Douluo took a deep breath to calm his agitated heart. He looked deep into the jungle. Under the ghost mask, his eyes were extremely complicated. The subtle control of attaching the soul power to the soles of the feet to allow one to walk smoothly on the tree, coupled with the superb throwing skills, allows each dagger to hit the weakest point. The silverback gorilla in a furious state, the pain will lessen, and only when its strength is exhausted will it be realized that he has lost too much blood. Quote. Furthermore, he did not take the soul beast in a dying state lightly. Instead, he took advantage of its violent and impulsive personality to send it to a dead end. This is a perfect combat plan made in a very short period of time according to the target's personality. There are no redundant steps. Even if it were a human being, I'm afraid. Ghost Douluo shook his head and did not finish his words, but Douluo understood what he meant. It's really scary. Is this really what a 6-year-old child can do? Old Ghost, when we were 6 years old. After Yu Guan heard all this, he couldn't help but murmured in a daze. Even if this kid doesn't have any talent, he will definitely be a great person in the future. What's more, his talent is so outstanding. He looked at Yan, who was still screaming in fear from an ordinary beast in the distance, and Su Chen, who had fought a 50-year-old soul beast alone but was still calm, and suddenly smiled bitterly. Is the gap between people really so big? Click. The sound of shattering dead leaves was clear and weak. Su Chen's ears moved, and his eyes as white as jade scanned the deep jungle. Although it was on the periphery, the trees that blocked the sky still reduced the visibility here. Fortunately, this had no impact on Su Chen, who had white eyes. However, although Bayan didn't notice anything unusual, the young man still felt something was wrong. His steps slowed down, his waist bowed slightly, and his whole body looked like a cheetah ready to go. A faint white mist appeared around me at some point, and a hint of the fragrant smell of vegetation gradually floated in the air. It's a wonderful aroma that's addictive. Buzz. An undetectable sound came from the ground. In an instant, the alarm bells rang in the young man's heart, and the hair on his body stood up. Without hesitation, he pulled the wire that had been arranged in advance and left the place. Bang! A sharp wooden thorn suddenly shot up from where the young man had just stood, smashing a rock into pieces. A slight difference. Su Chen stood on the treetop, looking at his ripped clothes in shock. If he hadn't pulled them open in advance, he would have been the one with the holes. What's going on? Why are you rolling your eyes? That's wrong. Boom! The land began to surge, trees collapsed, and the soil rolled. Su Chen had to move back and forth to barely stabilize his body. A few veins sprouted from the corners of the young man's eyes, and his white eyes opened to their maximum size at this moment. All the scenery within a kilometer radius was in his eyes, and his pupils suddenly shrank. After a moment, the shaking of the earth slowly stopped, and a huge soul beast also appeared in front of Su Chen's eyes. It was a strange spirit beast that looked like a dragon but not a dragon, and looked like a silkworm but not a silkworm. It was more than 20 meters long, and its whole body exuded an emerald-like light. It had a single horn on its forehead, but its lower body had many veins weirdly extending out of its roots. In the earth, tightly connected with those trees. Those emerald-like eyes were looking at Su Chen greedily, as if they were looking at some delicious food. It's not that Bian didn't notice anything, but that thing was perfectly integrated with the roots of the tree. Sure enough, novels and reality are different after all. This is a brand new world. If you still use your own previous knowledge to judge, there will be big problems. Buzz. There was another slight noise, and the boy hurriedly pulled the wire. With the help of the Sharingan, he narrowly avoided a wooden thorn that came from nowhere, and intentionally or unintentionally led it to another direction. PFF'd. A certain snake-like soul beast that had been lingering in the tree for a long time, seemingly trying to make a sneak attack, was instantly stabbed through, and it completely lost its voice without even making a scream. Looks like he's a big guy. Looking at the dark yellow soul ring emerging from the soul beast, Su Chen took a deep breath and a solemn expression appeared on his face. I originally wanted to divert trouble to the east, but now it seems that this weird soul beast is probably much more powerful than I expected. If it can kill a 100-year-old soul beast in an instant, then the age of this soul beast is about to come. Millennium Soul Beast. Boom. The huge vibration startled a flock of birds, and Yan fell out of the tree in fright. Don't eat me, don't eat me. With his face pale, he hid in the bushes and shivered. He didn't dare to slowly poke his head out until the movement stopped. Not far away, Xie Yu was avoiding the pursuit of the soul beast. Hearing the movement, he couldn't help but lose consciousness for a moment, and there was a bloody scratch on his back. The young man groaned in pain, but did not dare to stop. Juliana hadn't found the soul beast yet. When the vibration sounded, the girl couldn't help but look up, a trace of worry flashed in her beautiful eyes. Because she remembered that it seemed to be the direction Su Chen was going. At the same time, this shock also interrupted Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo who were sighing. No, something happened to that boy Su Chen. Ju Douluo suddenly raised his head and looked around, but his expression changed greatly. Why is this guy? Bang! The surging energy swept away everything that blocked the road, trees flew away, weak soul beasts screamed and were affected, two figures flashed by, violently destroying everything on the road. He killed a monkey soul beast that wanted to attack, and Ju Douluo's somewhat feminine face was full of anxiety. Old ghost, you are fast, go and check the situation first. Although it is unwise to use such a huge soul power in the Xingdu Great Forest, and it may even attract the attention of some big guys, Yu Guan can't care so much now. If Su Chen gets into trouble, how can he have the face to see His Holiness the Pope? Or under the premise that this young man has shown such talent. Why does this kind of thing appear in the periphery? Hasn't it been extinct long ago? The always gentle Ju Douluo couldn't help but swear. His eyes penetrated through the layers of trees and stayed on the giant beast and the precarious little white-haired figure in front of him. Linwu Silkworm. This is a very rare and unique soul beast. In the summer of each year, it will transform into the animal soul beast dragon silkworm, which has extremely high defense and attack power, and can move freely. And in the winter of each year, it will transform into the plant soul beast woodland flower, which can only take root in the same place, has huge vitality and almost immortal characteristics. Based on the strength of the two states, both dragon silkworm and woodland flower have few rivals, and even in the millennium, they can compete with 10,000 years. But this soul beast has a fatal weakness. That is, every time it advances, within a day, not only will it lose the abnormal defense and attack power of the dragon silkworm, but it will also be like woodland flower, which can only take root in a certain place and cannot be easily moved, and without its huge vitality and immortal characteristics, it will transform into a special, attribute soul beast, that is, Linwu silkworm. The Linwu silkworm in this state is extremely fragile, and its body has extremely high energy value. It is a great tonic for both soul masters and soul beasts. Not only is it coveted by soul beasts, it is also hunted by human soul masters. In the past 100 years, it has been on the verge of extinction. Therefore, this kind of soul beast rarely grows to 10,000 years. But now it appears on the outskirts of the forest, and is bumped into by Su Chen. Zhu Douluo no longer knows whether his genius is lucky or unlucky. But Yu Guan knows that this is definitely not an opponent that Su Chen can face at this stage. No matter how fragile the Linwu silkworm is, it is not something that a person who is not even a soul master can touch. On the contrary, the current Linwu silkworm is even more dangerous to Su Chen. A trapped beast will still fight, let alone a soul beast. Facing a life and death crisis, the Linwu silkworm will definitely kill all possibilities in the cradle. Bang bang bang. The wood thorns with violent energy were dense like raindrops, covering the area. Whether it was trees, flowers, or even the affected soul beasts, they were all torn and penetrated. In the almost invisible gap between the storm, a white figure shuttled back and forth, like a swimming dragon, making almost impossible movements one after another, avoiding one fatal attack after another. Puff! Another unlucky soul beast was diverted by Su Chen, but it also delayed a little time accordingly. It's really troublesome. Su Chen panted slightly, and the Magatama in his blood-red eyes had turned into a residual image, but he could only barely capture some of the tracks. He was able to avoid those attacks mostly because of his fighting instinct, which allowed him to make predictions. Thanks to the potion soaking and scientific training he had studied in the ninja world since he was a child, otherwise the physical strength of a 6-year-old would not be enough to support him for so long. Even so, Su Chen felt that he was almost at his limit. It's about 6 breaths before Zhu Douluo and Ghost Douluo arrive. Wipe the sweat off his forehead, the boy stared at the restless soul beast, calculating rapidly in his mind. That is to say, boom. The more violent attack came quickly, and the boy narrowly avoided it. His tattered clothes were completely shattered into dregs, revealing his well-proportioned upper body. The Linwu silkworm seemed to have sensed the approach of death and attacked more violently. For a while, the pressure Su Chen faced increased exponentially. Several times, the attack that was enough to smash him narrowly passed by, and the strong wind left blood marks on his body. But the boy's eyes lit up. Taking advantage of the short interval between the two attacks, Su Chen switched his Sharingan to Byakugan without hesitation. Perspective. As expected, it is injured. Do you want to eat me and then run away? At the root of the soul beast, there is a complex and condensed node. The energy of this soul beast is being lost in large quantities along with that node. At the beginning, Su Chen noticed that this soul beast was greedy for him. Rather than counter-attacking the invaded territory, it was more like wanting to completely devour him. Thinking of the strange reaction when he injected chakra into Huliena's body when awakening his martial soul, Su Chen can basically conclude that chakra is an energy that is absolutely superior to soul power and has great attraction and benefits for living things. Even if this soul beast sensed the arrival of Zhu Douluo and Ghost Douluo, it did not run away and still wanted to eat him first, which further confirmed his guess. All creatures seek benefits and avoid harm. Although this soul beast seems to be inconvenient to move, Su Chen does not believe that it is completely unable to move. Compared to himself, it is more like a desperate struggle. The corner of the boy's mouth curled slightly, and a crazy idea emerged in his mind. After remembering that node, Su Chen switched to the Scarlet Sharingan again, and began to dodge at the edge, but rushed straight towards the soul beast's body. Zhu Douluo, who had been paying attention to this place, was so angry that his eyes were about to burst, his whole body was shining, and 9 soul rings suddenly appeared. His speed increased again, but it was too late. Stinky boy, are you crazy? Zhu Douluo roared, but he could only watch the green sky drowning the figure of the white-haired boy. It's over. Yu Guan stopped in despair, feeling dizzy and as if he fell into an ice cellar. Because of his negligence, a future titled Douluo died here. Ha! Boom! Under Douluo's astonished gaze, a surging energy column shot up into the sky, and the shock wave that rolled up splashed everything around it, tearing a huge hole in the dense forest, revealing the blue sky outside. Under the golden sunlight, the white-haired boy stood in the center of the messy battlefield, holding a huge strange fan. In front of him, there was a dark purple soul ring engraved with this mysterious rune. It was a 1,000-year soul ring that represented the death of a 1,000-year soul beast. Time goes back to a few breaths ago. The strong wind blew up the boy's hair and scratched his skin. But Su Chen did not stop, but instead accelerated his speed and rushed towards the body of the huge soul beast. It's getting closer. The boy took a deep breath and poured all the remaining chakra into his wrist. He had heard Douluo's shout, but Su Chen did not intend to stop. His wrist gradually lit up under the infusion of chakra. Seeing that the human soul master with huge life energy gave up escaping and rushed towards him, the jade-colored pupils of Lin Wujikin showed a little doubt and ecstasy of getting what he wanted. As long as he ate him, his injuries would be healed in an instant, and then he would quickly escape through the branches of the earth veins and leave this forest, especially the depths of this forest. Thinking of the terrifying soul beasts in the center, Lin Wujikin couldn't help but shudder. But it doesn't matter, it's all going to end. I will be able to advance successfully soon. It greedily looked at Su Chen's body getting closer and closer, as if looking at a ball of extremely rich natural treasures. Although I don't know why this human wants to die, I can't take it lightly. Humans are the most cunning. A trace of cruelty flashed in the green pupils of the Linwu silkworm, and the throat flickered with yellow light, and then roar. The scorching dragon breath, accompanied by a roar like a dragon or a dragon, gushed out of the mouth of the Linwu silkworm. The scorching temperature even made the air twist and tremble, rushing towards Su Chen, who was close at hand. At the same time, the boy took a deep breath of the hot air, and the light on his wrist was bright. A huge round fan suddenly appeared in his hand and swung it fiercely. Uchiha rebound. Boom! A violent explosion resounded through the heavens and the earth, and the blinding white light enveloped everything, burning and destroying all the roots of the surrounding Linwu silkworm. Amid the strange screams of the soul beast, Su Chen tightly grasped the fan in his hand and curled up behind the fan blades, trying his best to avoid the violent shock wave. After a moment, the white light disappeared, and the screams of the soul beast also stopped. Su Chen then carefully got out from behind the fan to check the situation. This area, which was originally a lush bush, has become a huge pit of hundreds of meters. The soil is charred and no grass grows. Only behind Su Chen, there is still some withered green. The treetops above the head have also disappeared, and the blue sky and white clouds are clearly visible. The soul beast that faced the full power of the explosion has been blown off by the lazy waste, and it can't die anymore. The purple light is slowly gathering and gradually forming a ring. It is indeed a treasure made of the branches of the sacred tree. No wonder Madara likes it so much. The young man breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the fan, which had become much darker. The fan is white with black edges and a long handle. There are 3 rotating black magatama on each side. The Uchiha clan's treasure, the flame fan. It is made of a part of the branches of the sacred tree. It has the ability to use wind escape to control fire escape ninjutsu and rebound. In the original work, Madara even used this fan to rebound Naruto's tailed beast ball. Of course, it is now Su Chen's trophy. This is also the reason why he dares to counterattack. With Su Chen's current strength, he is definitely unable to use the flame fan, but fortunately, he was prepared at the beginning of his time travel and used the method of his previous life to charge it. After several years, he got such a chance to use it. Putting the fan into the storage soul guide on his wrist, Su Chen couldn't help but frown. At this stage, the research on soul guides in Douluo continent was simply horrible, especially the storage soul guides. Even this kind of treasure, that cost a lot of money to find, was extremely crude in his eyes. Not only was the soul power communication extremely slow, but the positioning speed was also extremely slow in such a small space. If he hadn't been very familiar with the control of chakra, he might have overturned. It seems that I have to research the storage scroll as soon as possible, and the spiritualism. The young man pinched his chin, silently memorized this plan, and then turned his eyes to his spoils, and his dark eyes couldn't help but shine slightly. Even though he lost a trump card, the harvest this time can be said to be very rich. 1,000-year soul ring. It's still a soul ring that looks very precious. After all, Su Chen has never seen such a strange soul beast and soul power in the original work. It is obviously a plant system, but it has the breath of a dragon. The two opposites are perfectly integrated, and they actually interact and become a pure energy that has no belonging at all. Originally, Su Chen wanted to find a soul beast that did not contain any elements, or contained all elements, in order to deal with possible problems with chakra and soul power, and the appearance of this soul beast completely satisfied his idea. When Bayan saw the wound of this soul beast, he also saw the huge energy brewing in its throat, and understood that this soul beast wanted to start the final attack. Therefore, he had the idea of counter-attacking. Now it seems that the result is also very gratifying. So, since you want to eat me, now I absorb your soul ring, it's even. The young man laughed, released his soul power, and guided the mysterious deep purple soul ring without hesitation, and put it on himself. In theory, only Soul Master can withstand the impact of the residual consciousness contained in the 1,000-year soul ring. The violent energy surged suddenly, and the tearing pain surged from all sides of the body. A resentful malice emerged from his heart, constantly attacking his consciousness. In the spiritual world, the black shadow transformed by the Linwu silkworm roared to the sky, covering the sky and the sun, as if it would devour Su Chen's small figure in the next second. But the boy looked indifferent, and even smiled with disdain. But, all the souls that are intact in the Pure Land will be under my control, not to mention you, the only remaining soul of a beast. Kneel down. Boom. A majestic figure like heaven and earth appeared in the spiritual sea. The white feathers were filled with a sense of holiness, and the spiral 9 Magatama eyes were indifferent and ruthless, as if the heaven was watching all living beings, and the whole world was completely reduced to the foil of this figure. Compared with it, the huge black body of the Linwu silkworm was not as good as a small cat. Its residual soul looked at the figure that was 1,000,000 times taller than itself with great fear. The next moment, when the pair of sacred and indifferent 9 Magatama spiral eyes looked over, it completely turned into a ball of wisps of green smoke and disappeared completely. At the last moment when its consciousness completely dissipated, the remaining consciousness of Linwu silkworm finally emerged with deep regret. Perhaps I shouldn't have taken the initiative to provoke this human. He is not a human. Douluo in the outside world has not yet recovered from the great shock of the death of the 1,000-year soul beast, and saw the boy put the soul ring on it. The heart that had just fallen was instantly raised to the throat, and the roaring voice was even a little hoarse, Don't do this to your own death. Just the next second, the white-haired boy opened his eyes, and the dark purple soul ring had already appeared on his body obediently. The roar stopped abruptly, as if his throat was pinched. Yu Guan slowly opened his mouth and eyes, his neck tilted, and a question mark clearly appeared on his head. What happened? Douluo felt that today was really magical. If he hadn't left the spirit hall recently, he would have even suspected that he had hallucinated because of the poison of the old poisoner Dugu Bo. First, his fresh and hot genius fought a 50-year-old soul beast. Although it was extremely outrageous, it was barely traceable. I can't do it, but he can. But what happened later was completely beyond his cognition. First, his genius encountered an extremely rare soul beast that is rare in 1,000 years, and then it happened to be the weakest and most dangerous time for this soul beast. It was completely beyond Yu Guan's expectation that he could hold on for so long, but he would never have thought that the kid actually killed it. A little kid who didn't have a soul ring and was not even a soul master, fought a real 1,000-year-old soul beast head-on. What concept? It was logical for a little white rabbit to kill a tiger, but it was a bit outrageous to kill an ancient beast, right? Douluo and Douluo were no longer shocked. They even looked at each other blankly, wondering if they had not left the house yet and were still in a dream. However, this was not the end. That kid actually started to absorb the soul ring directly. Douluo almost couldn't catch his breath and fainted on the spot. He sat on the ground somewhat powerlessly, looking at Su Chen blankly. No, even if you don't have common sense, your instinct should tell you that it is not something you should touch now, right? The first ring is 1,000 years, that is a sure suicide. Douluo really didn't know whether he should cry or laugh. 10-year soul beasts came, and even 1,000-year soul beasts were killed, but they died because of the ignorance of forcibly absorbing soul rings. How did he report this to His Holiness the Pope? Desperate, destroy, quickly. At this moment, he even thought about where to bury himself. But the next moment, Yu Guan and Gui Mei saw a scene that they would never forget in their lives. The spirit ring that was just violent turned into a docile lamb in the next second, instantly eliminating its aura and becoming a part of the boy. I actually absorbed it successfully. Zhu Douluo rubbed his eyes desperately, pointed tremblingly for a long time, and then looked at Ghost Douluo, his expression twisted. Just succeeded like that. The latter stared at Su Chen intently, but no matter what, he could not detect anything wrong. The 1,000-year spirit ring became the boy's first spirit ring without any stagnation. No resistance, no violence, no explosion and death, and even no waves. In just a few breaths, it was absorbed successfully. I must be dreaming. Even if it is a perfectly compatible spirit ring, the absorption time cannot be so short. Ghost Douluo muttered, not knowing whether to cry or laugh. The Douluo named ghost has experienced what it feels like to see a ghost today. Su Chen didn't know that he had completely destroyed the 3 views of the 2 veteran Douluos, and even if he knew, he probably wouldn't have time to worry about it. At this moment, he was feeling the incomparable sense of power and the joy of his whole body. The feeling of the last bit of obstruction between himself and the world disappeared quietly, as if he had officially and perfectly integrated into this world. With a thought, chakra surged to the 7 meridians and 8 vessels, smoothly and naturally, completely different from the previous feeling. He stretched out his hand, slowly exhaled, and began to make seals with both hands. Wei Si Yin. Boom. The white smoke rippled, and when it dissipated, a person who looked exactly like Su Chen was already standing beside him. Clone technique. In the world of Naruto, it is one of the 3 basic ninjutsu, used to create afterimages to disturb the enemy. It is an extremely simple technique. Seeing the familiar and unfamiliar ninjutsu appear, even Su Chen, who is as indifferent as he is, can't help but feel excited. This means that he can reproduce the glory of the gorgeous ninjutsu in Douluo continent. Flying Thunder God, Impure World Reincarnation, Rasengan. The boy took a deep breath, suppressed his excitement, and opened the system panel. Name: Su Chen. Gender: male. Age: 6 years old. Realm: Level 15, Soul Master, breaking through level 20 to become a great Soul Master. Soul Ring: Purple, 3,000 years. Soul Skill: Dragon's Air. All attributes increased by 50%. When damaged, life recovery speed increased by 50%, 200%. The lower the vitality, the higher the recovery speed. Chakra attribute: None. Original Force. Life Energy: 1600. Standard Soul Master 100 to 500. Spirit Energy: 500. Extreme value of Spiritual Communication Realm. Standard Soul Master is Spiritual Yuan Realm 0 to 50. Soul Power Chakra 1500, Standard Quasi-Spirit Master 100 to 800. External Soul Bone. Sharingan Single Magatama improves nerve reaction speed, dynamic detection, can release illusion through line of sight. White Eyes, Perspective, 360 degrees no dead angle detection, farsightedness of 1 kilometer. Features: Perfect Sage Body 12%, your self-healing ability is enhanced, physical recovery speed is enhanced, vitality is enhanced, affinity with nature is enhanced, cultivation talent is improved, and the speed of cultivation in Sage mode is increased. Ancestor of Pupil Techniques. You can use all pupil techniques without restrictions, requiring Mangekyo Sharingan, Eternal Mangekyo, Rinnegan, Kamui unavailable, Amaterasu unavailable, Tsukuyomi unavailable. Skills available: Su Chen Lu Swordsmanship, Su Chen Lu Shurikenjutsu, Su Chen Lulijutsu, Sanshinjutsu, 8 Gates Dunjia, 3rd Gate. After a quick look, Su Chen couldn't help but exclaim in his heart. It is indeed a rare 1,000-year soul ring. This time the improvement is not small. First of all, the life energy, mental energy and even soul power have increased a lot, and the soul power has even increased by 5 levels. More importantly, his first soul skill, which seems simple, has an astonishing improvement. It simply and roughly improves all attributes by 50% and directly maximizes his survivability. With his immortal body, people of the same level may not be able to kill him even if they chop him for 3 days and 3 nights. His basic life energy and mental energy are much higher than those of normal people. In addition, the immortal body brings him an improvement in self-healing ability. As long as the chakra is not exhausted, unless he is killed in one wave, it is difficult for his life to be in danger. Undoubtedly a magical skill, such strength should appear in the 4th or 5th ring. It is better to say that he really picked up a treasure. As for the 2% increase in the awakening degree of the immortal body, this is the icing on the cake. And those ninjutsu that were not difficult in the first place, such as the 3-body technique and the instant body technique, can be used again. These are what Su Chen has thought about after crossing, but he can't release them because he has no chakra. As for the 8 gates, although he can't use chakra and can't drive them, physical training is common. In addition, the physical fitness brought by this 1000-year soul ring has been enhanced. He is not surprised that he can open 3 gates now. In general, this wave of improvement is very large. If he meets the silverback gorilla again, even if he doesn't use soul skills or the 8 gates, he can kick it to death. And if this Linwu silkworm is resurrected and opens the 8 gates, it may not be without the power to fight. The chakra's attributes haven't changed, but they are completely different from before. It seems that the attributes of the spirit ring seem to affect the chakra's attributes. Looking at the additional chakra attribute column on the panel, Su Chen was thoughtful. In the ninja world, the attributes of chakra are determined by test paper, which is determined from the beginning, but other attributes can be cultivated later, but the power released is not as strong as the ninjutsu of its own attributes. In Douluo continent, it seems that it can only be used by obtaining the corresponding spirit ring. So, now we can only release ninjutsu that does not require chakra to change its nature. The young man pondered, and his mind moved. Chakra began to gather rapidly in his hands according to a certain frequency and rhythm. In a moment, it condensed into a high-frequency rotating blue light ball. Chapter 11. Rasengan. The 4th generation Hokage Namikaze Minato's genius work, Muji Ninjutsu, does not require any chakra changes initially. It is a ninjutsu with a very high upper limit and a very low lower limit. That kid Naruto relied on this move to punch through the finale. Releasing this Muji Ninjutsu requires extremely high chakra micro-manipulation and control abilities. Those with poor abilities may even need a shadow clone to assist. As the initiate and common researcher of this technique, Su Chen naturally doesn't have to go through so much trouble. The blue cyclone kept brewing in his hands, gradually gathering into the size of a football, and then began to become a little unstable. And Su Chen also felt that this was probably the limit of his control. Sure enough, you still can't become fat in one bite. Su Chen, who wanted to directly use the advanced version of the Rasengan, the Deu Rasengan, shook his head and waved his hand to disperse the accumulated energy. After stretching, the sound of crackling beans could be heard all over his body. The young man twisted his neck and decided to go say hello to Ju Douluo and the others first. Ouch! The long howl of wolves came from all directions, and the boy's steps stopped in place. At some point, several gray wolves surrounded him. Hey, I really got carried away and my vigilance dropped. The young man was slightly annoyed. The joy of obtaining the soul ring and studying soul skills made him forget to investigate the surrounding situation, and he was not even aware of the approach of this group of wolves. This is a taboo and should not be done again in the future. Su Chen, who silently remembered this in his heart, shook his head and scanned the increasingly more bloody eyes around him with his black eyes. He saw the undisguised greed in their eyes for him and the corpse of the soul beast. Were you attracted here by the energy fluctuations? You were really brave. Su Chen chuckled and focused on the wolf in the front that was obviously larger than the other wolves. Unlike other wolves that are full of greed, this wolf is not only larger in size, but also has smoother and shiny fur, and even has a little more cunning and agility in its eyes. 1000-year-old soul beast. You came just in time. 1000-year-old soul beasts already have a strong instinct to seek benefits and avoid harm, but they can't stand the smell coming from here, it's just too fragrant. Ah! It roared lowly and leaned down, while the surrounding wolves seemed to have received some order. They howled together, condensed green light in their mouths, and spit out a wind blade. The dense wind blade surged towards Su Chen. Although they were all 10-year soul beasts, with only a few 100-year soul beasts among them, the ants could still kill an elephant, not to mention that every blow could kill an elephant. An ordinary soul master was cut in half. Careful. Douluo and Ghost Douluo ignored the complicated emotions in their hearts and immediately wanted to take action, but they both stopped. Because they saw the young man waving his hands. Don't be too arrogant, kid, there are century-old soul beasts here. Douluo was furious, understanding that the young man had just been promoted and wanted to try soul skills. But the question is this a target you can use to practice? This is a group of 10-year soul beasts plus a 100-year soul beast, and the leader is even a 1,000-year soul beast. Forget it, let's just watch it first. If the situation is not right, we will take action. Don't forget, he just absorbed the 1,000-year soul ring. Ghost Douluo grabbed him and shook his head. Yugon suddenly stopped. Yes, the first soul ring in 1,000 years, this is something unprecedented. How strong it is, they themselves don't know. Then, Douluo and Ghost Douluo once again saw a scene that subverted their perceptions. Countless dense wind blades surrounded the young man in all directions, almost cutting off any place for him to escape. Wolf Head is not a fool. He must not be a simple person to survive in such a place. Therefore, from the beginning, he struck with all his strength. However, it did not see any fearful expression on the face of the human boy at the center of the attack. It still had the indifferent smile from the beginning. Then, the wolf leader saw that the boy's eyes suddenly turned into a scarlet and unknown color. Bang bang bang. There was no time to think about what the change was. In an instant, the attack had arrived. Mud splashed, smoke scattered, and a large amount of white smoke spread from Su Chen's position. Although he was sure that this kid didn't need their help, Douluo couldn't help but feel nervous when he saw this scene. However, when the smoke and dust dissipated, both Wolf Head, Douluo and Ghost Douluo all had their eyes widened. The ground was cut into a mess by the wind blade, but where the boy was originally, his figure was no longer there, replaced by a piece of broken wood. Disappeared. Hey, look here. The chuckle attracted the attention of the two men and the beast, and then they saw that the young man was standing on a big tree behind them at some unknown time. Moving at high speed, or what? Douluo frowned. It can't be teleportation, right? It's a combination of the two. Ghost Douluo thought for a moment, a hint of shock flashed in his eyes. Use the instant burst of movement speed to leave, and then replace yourself with wood. What an exquisite design. If you are fighting against a soul master, this move can be very effective. As a titled Douluo who is good at speed, Wei Mei can naturally analyze the secret behind this. The speed of that instant burst was beyond the reach of a normal great soul master or even a soul master. As for the replacement, even soul master couldn't analyze it because he was caught off guard. It was a very practical soul skill for both offense and defense. Should we say it is worthy of being the first soul skill in 1,000 years? It is really extraordinary. He sighed. Compared with the two people's size, the wolf head was a little horrified at this moment. Not only was the inevitable attack easily avoided, it couldn't see how the human did it, and although it was only a moment, it still felt the terrifying aura emitted by the two people watching from a distance. Should we retreat? It struggled to look at the corpse of the Linwu silkworm and the white-haired boy on the ground. As long as it ate them, it would have the hope of breaking through to a 10,000-year soul beast. A 10,000-year soul beast, even in this forest, it can definitely be called a hegemon. If Su Chen knew what it was thinking, he would definitely tell it that the young man was too naive. A primary 10,000-year soul beast, let alone a hegemon, is at most a big cannon fodder in this forest. Little did they know that the 100,000-year soul beasts were guarding the core area. With a turn of his eyes, the wolf head looked at the followers around him waiting for his orders, and a trace of cruelty flashed in his bloodshot eyes. As long as he could achieve a 10,000-year soul beast, some sacrifices were acceptable. Roar! It howled to the sky, and the wolf pack suddenly split into two groups, half of which besieged Su Chen, while the other half rushed towards Douluo and Ghost Douluo. The sudden change made the three of them slightly stunned. Su Chen's mind turned, and he understood the wolf head's plan. Do you want to use the lives of the trash to interfere with Douluo and Ghost Douluo, and then set the target on me? The young man shook his head and laughed. Smart approach, but a pity. Boom! Green energy burst out from the boy's body, dust flew, and his naked upper body was stained with a light red. His white hair was blown upward by the violent energy fluctuations, and his blood-red eyes were also stained with a layer of high fighting spirit. Ha! Exhaling a hot breath, the boy clenched his fists, tilted his head, and looked at the wolf head with cold hair standing on end. Since this is a performance, then I can't let the audience be disturbed. 8 gates of Dunjia, the third gate of life, open. Powerful, unprecedentedly powerful. Feeling the explosive power coming from the muscles and bones, Su Chen nodded with satisfaction. The 8-gate armor formation is indeed the #1 taijutsu in the ninja world. It is only the third gate that gives him such a powerful ability. The young man had a hunch that now he could hang up the Millennium Wolf Soul Beast and beat it. It's just a pity that the body is not strong enough. Now the duration of opening the third door is only about 1 minute, so I can fight quickly. However, there is enough time. Su Chen grinned slightly, revealing his white teeth, and looked at the wolf head who had begun to tremble with blood-colored eyes as he stepped back. Anxiety, you are the last one. The young man tiptoed gently. Pong! The young boy's foothold, the branch instantly shattered due to the force of the shock. A green stream of light flashed through a surging air wave, carrying a violent power, and instantly appeared in front of the shocked Jigui Douluo. The strong wind, their hair and robes were rolled up, but the two of them seemed undecided. Pong pong. Amidst the screams, the wolves that attacked the two of them flew out one after another, their bodies twisted into incredible angles, as if they could not survive. For a moment, there was nothing around them. The young man nodded towards the two of them as a greeting, and then instantly turned into blue light and disappeared. Isn't this intensity already close to the soul sect level? This is also the ability of a 1,000-year soul ring. Can someone be promoted from a soul master to a soul sect at once? What a joke. Ju Douluo pointed at Su Chen tremblingly, his lips trembling. Even the martial spirit avatar doesn't have the ability to cross level 30 at once, does it? Ghost Douluo remained silent. He didn't know what adjectives to use to describe the current situation. Today, in just less than 2 hours, this young man had already refreshed their understanding several times. If the techniques of instantaneous body and substitute are still within their understanding, this first level can increase such terrifying strength. They have never seen it, not even the 4th, 5th, or even martial soul true body. None of them have such a powerful ability to improve. And this is just Su Chen's first step. That's really the true form of Wuhun. Ghost Douluo no longer dared to think about it. Screams rang out one after another, airwaves surged, and dust flew. Within a few breaths, the only one left alive was the wolf that retreated dozens of meters. The latter's legs were weak and he let out a cry of fear, whimper. Too fast, too fast. In less than a few breaths, his own tribe was wiped out by this human being, this little human being. Escape, you must escape quickly. I can't die here. The tribe can still reproduce after death. I want to live. I want to become a 10,000-year soul beast. Click. After breaking the neck of the last wolf, the boy threw it away without even looking at the floating yellow soul ring, and turned to look at the shivering Millennium Wolf soul beast. Are you so brave? How can you still hold back from running after this? The young man looked at the Millennium Wolf spirit beast that had collapsed on the ground with some surprise, and then nodded appreciatively. Fortunately, the Millennium Wolf cannot understand the meaning of human language and cannot speak, otherwise he would have cursed loudly. I don't want to run away. My legs are too weak and I can't run. In that case, I will give you a happy death. Su Chen dispersed the 8 armor formations and took a breath. This move is cool, but it consumes a lot of chakra and puts a heavy load on the body. Otherwise, if he activates the 8 gates of Dunjia and then activates the first soul skill, he will be even stronger. Of course, the persistence time will also be directly shortened by at least half. Celebrate, you should be the first creature in this world to die from this move. Buzz. The boy stretched out his right hand, and the chakra quickly gathered, forming a blue, constantly rotating energy group. The awe-inspiring fluctuations attracted the attention of Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo. That is, the two of them stared blankly at the small ball of light, feeling the huge destructive power contained in it. Whoosh! The boy's figure disappeared in an instant, and when he reappeared, he was already on top of the Millennium Wolf, who was still trying to retreat. The art of instantaneous body, and Rasengan. Boom boom boom. In the horrified and frightened eyes of the Millennium Wolf Soul Beast, a blue ball of light burst out from its body, like a meteor carrying the power of soaring into the sky, breaking hundreds of trees and flying 100 meters away. And after smashing another small hill-like rock, he stopped. Click! Trees collapsed one after another, forming a 100-meter-long hollow. Gouda! Douluo swallowed his saliva and pointed at the scene that looked like a natural disaster, his voice trembling. Is this also the soul skill of the first soul ring? At this moment, Yu Guan deeply doubted whether his 1,000-year soul ring was fake. Of course, he can now do this level of destruction, even more exaggeratedly, but he is a titled Douluo. Su Chen is just a soul master, Is this his first soul ring? High-speed movement, replacement, the ability to strengthen by leaping 30 levels at a time, and the extremely powerful attack ability with almost no prelude to release, penetrating impact. Ghost Douluo took a deep breath, looked at the young man who seemed to be a little weak, and said as if he was dreaming. The first soul ring has such comprehensive abilities. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have thought it was a fantasy. This is no longer genius. This child is a monster, an absolute monster. I'm afraid it's unlikely that such a person will appear in the next 10 or 100 years. Fortunately, such a person appears in my Wuhun palace, otherwise. Gui Mei looked at Yugan, and both of them saw the complexity in his eyes. When Su Chen came over after receiving the bodies of the 1,000-year wolf head and the black silkworm into the storage soul guide, he found that the two titled Douluo were looking at him with eyes sizing up monsters. Well, it seems that my goal has been achieved. Judging from this reaction, it seems that he used too much force. The young man thought to himself. Two elders, don't talk yet, let me slow down first. Douluo took a deep breath and looked at the handsome boy with a bare upper body and well-proportioned muscles in front of him. There was no pride or excitement in those black eyes, only a composure that was totally inappropriate for his age. Yu Guan, who originally wanted to suppress his energy, was suddenly discouraged. This guy is really a monster, whether it's his talent, strength, or his character. Why can you be so calm? You just killed 2,000-year-old soul beasts. Put on your clothes first. Ghost Douluo was calmer. He took out a black robe from the storage soul guide and handed it to Su Chen. You boy, you really opened the eyes of us two old guys. Seeing the latter put on his clothes, Gui Mei couldn't help but smile bitterly, and then asked with some curiosity, well, can you tell us how you killed the Millennium Linwu Silkworm, which is the first Millennium Soul Beast? Of course, it's okay not to say anything if it's inconvenient. Su Chen shook his head. Of course, this is not a private matter. Before I set off, my father gave me a special soul guide, which contained his full power attack. It can only be used once, just rely on I just took care of that soul beast. This was what he had planned for a long time, and the attack of the soul guide and Su Xiao had also been arranged in advance. At present, Wuhan Fan has only shown the ability to compete with the Millennium Soul Beast, which is far from being coveted. Besides, this is not an important thing. Sure enough, Gui Mei nodded thoughtfully. That's right, I understand. Let's go back first. We'll talk about the rest when we return to Wuhun Hall. Just as Su Chen expected, Ghost Douluo just asked casually. Although there are few such soul guides, they are not unavailable. He is just curious. After all, Lin Wuji Silkworm is the best among the 1,000-year soul beasts, but it is only a 1,000-year soul beast. Maybe there are some secrets, but so what? In Ghost Douluo's opinion, there is nothing more important than Su Chen himself now. It seems that the plan has to be terminated ahead of schedule. The Linwu Silkworm, a soul beast that has not appeared for thousands of years, has appeared in the periphery. It is possible that there have been some changes in the Xingdu Great Forest that we don't know about. Ghost Douluo frowned and said solemnly, is the Linwu Silkworm the soul beast with his first soul ring? Su Chen was a little curious. But now is obviously not the time to ask. He decided to look up the information himself after returning. Speaking of which, he deliberately showed so much. After returning, he should have the opportunity to meet the Pope, right? No problem. Douluo nodded. Although he is still in a complicated mood at the moment, he also knows the importance of things, especially after Su Chen showed such a demonic side. Sending Su Chen safely back to the Daowu Soul Hall is the top priority. After making up their minds, the three of them rushed all the way and quickly arrived at the gathering place. After telling Su Chen not to run around, the two Douluos, Ju and Gui, also left in a hurry. Titled Douluo helped to hunt soul rings, especially when they were in a hurry, so the speed was not fast. After a while, Su Chen felt some subtle fluctuations in soul power, because someone was absorbing soul rings. Before absorbing soul rings, this kind of fluctuation was extremely difficult to detect, but now, as long as you focus a little, it seems that getting soul rings has a lot of influence on me. Su Chen shook his head and began to think about the countermeasures later. I need resources, money, and influence. Then, it is very necessary to expose it to the eyes of the high-level people of the Spirit Hall in advance, which is why he showed some of his abilities in front of Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo. If you want to have the right to speak, you must reflect your own value and must show it in the eyes of people who know the goods. Bibi Dong is his target. The youngest pope of the Spirit Hall. In the next few decades, she has achieved the ultimate control and expansion of the Spirit Hall's power, and the overall strength has also risen by more than one level. Putting aside some personal opinions, this woman is the top of this continent in terms of both intelligence and strength. If it weren't for the protagonist halo, she would definitely get what she wants. Smart partners are particularly important to Su Chen, and he doesn't want to waste time on fools. Just like in the ninja world, after he reached a deep cooperation with Orochimaru, the first thing he did was to completely cut off his relationship with Danzo. More importantly, Bibi Dong's weaknesses are very obvious, and in a sense, unexpectedly simple. This is a good thing for Su Chen. After all, there is no substantial conflict between his goals and Bibi Dong's. Rustle. The subtle sound of the bushes woke the boy up from his thinking, but Su Chen lost interest after just looking up. Ha 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 ha, I'm back. Yan squeezed out of the bushes with all his strength and laughed joyfully, but the moment he saw Su Chen, his laughter stopped abruptly, and he subconsciously shrank his neck. Just a moment later, he remembered something, his bent back straightened again, and his expression became proud and arrogant. Hey, you! He put his hands on his waist, pointed at Su Chen, and snorted coldly. You also got the first spirit ring, don't you dare to compete with me. This idiot boy. Su Chen was too lazy to pay attention to him, and continued to close his eyes and rest, thinking about his plan in his mind. Tang San should have just traveled through time this year, and he still has about 10 years to plan, but this body is still young at present, and what it can do is very limited. Even if he gets Bibi Dong's trust and support, he can only use the transformation technique to come forward to do some things, but this is somewhat contrary to his plan. 6 years old is still too young after all. If he wants to stand on the front stage and show his face in the Spirit Hall, he must be at least 12 or 13 years old. Su Chen had a headache. What, coward, you don't dare. I know you're a coward. However, when Yan saw Su Chen ignoring him, he walked forward angrily, and without saying a word, he actually released his martial spirit directly. The tall flame lord was wrapped in a layer of magma, emitting a scorching temperature, and a yellow 100-year soul ring was wrapped around it, with a majestic aura. Did you see it? This is a 100-year soul ring. As long as you kneel down and apologize now and admit that you are a coward, I won't do anything to you, otherwise. Let you taste the taste of a 100-year soul skill. The white-haired boy who was interrupted frowned, stared at Yan with his dark eyes, and spit out a word coldly. Get out. The coldness in the boy's black eyes was exactly the same as that day. Yan was instinctively frightened and took a step back. The fighting spirit in his heart was immediately reduced by half, but he moved his ears and heard the voices of Xie Yu and Juliana. If they could defeat Su Chen in front of them, would Juliana be able to? Thinking of this, Yan gritted his teeth and took a step forward despite his fear. You dare. Boom. The white-haired boy suddenly disappeared with a bang, and appeared in front of Yan in the blink of an eye. In his raised right hand, a blue light ball condensed into shape, and his dark eyes were full of indifferent murderous intent. The strong wind scraped Yan's face, but at this moment, he had no time to care. The murderous intent in the boy's eyes and the dark blue in his hand, like the scythe of the god of death, completely enveloped him. Will die, will die, will die. Several scarlet characters flashed in Yan's mind, and the chill of death rushed from his spine to the top of his head, making him feel like he was falling into an ice cellar. Ah! Perhaps it was the instinct of survival that allowed this talented genius to escape from the extreme fear for a moment, and the yellow 100-year soul ring bloomed with an extremely bright light at this moment. Hell magma rush. The red magma rushed into the sky and rushed towards Su Chen, and this scene happened to be seen by Juliana, Xie Yu and others who came. But things happened too fast, they had no time to react, and could only watch the magma drown Su Chen. Su Chen! Juliana screamed, and Xie Yu also frowned, but the next second, both of them widened their eyes in astonishment. The scorching magma that rushed into the sky even lasted less than half a second in front of the azure light ball, and then it was completely annihilated and disappeared. At this time, the only thing left on the field was that bright blue. Boom! The strong wind brought by the violent explosion blew up everyone's hair, their clothes rustled, the smoke and dust spread, the grass and soil splashed, and the crackling sound hit the trees like raindrops. Whoosh! The figures of Douluo and Ghost Douluo appeared instantly. They waved their hands with ugly faces, and the strong wind blew away the smoke completely, revealing the scene inside. The original flat grass had disappeared, replaced by a spiral pit. Yan stood in the center, his face pale, his legs trembling constantly, and water droplets dripping down. The whole person was between fainting and awake. This is the last time I will forgive you. If there is a next time, you can bury yourself here. The white-haired boy slowly retracted his right hand, slowly retracted his chakra, nodded slightly to everyone, and then sat back on his own. He didn't want to cause more twists and turns, but it didn't mean he had a lot of patience. Holding back was a sign of respect and kindness to Ju and Gui, the two Douluo, and Bibi Dong behind them. Hey, I knew it. How could this kid be so blind? Ju Douluo shook his head. This kid has good talent, but he likes to die too much. Fortunately, Su Chen did not do anything ruthlessly, otherwise, even if he killed him, the spirit hull would not be able to do anything to Su Chen. Yan is rare, but Su Chen is unique. Xie Yu, go and help Yan. He probably can't walk normally, Xie Yu. Ju Douluo raised his eyebrows, turned around and saw the stunned little faces, and suddenly felt helpless. Well, I'll do it myself. Su Chen's battle ended quickly, but the gradually fading purple ring still deeply hurt everyone's eyes. The first soul ring of 1,000 years. Xie Yu stared at the fading purple, his throat was a little dry, and his eyes were full of disbelief. This, Juliana and another girl stood there completely. Until a few people got on the carriage back, the atmosphere was still filled with dead silence. Even the chrysanthemum ghost Douluo couldn't stand the stimulation brought by Su Chen, let alone these young children. The 1,000-year soul ring and its astonishing destructive power all gave them an unprecedented shock. After all, Su Chen is the same 6 years old as them. Old ghost, these children won't be damaged by the blow, right? In front of the carriage, Ju Douluo raised his delicate eyebrows and looked at the few people who were depressed except Su Chen. Ever since they saw Su Chen's almost perfect move, several people had fallen into such a depressed state. Especially Yan, the child looked at Su Chen with nothing but fear in his eyes, which seemed to have left a huge psychological shadow. Ju Douluo expressed his understanding. The scary thing is not that there is a gap between him and a genius, but that you can't even see the end of the gap between him and a genius. However, he thinks this is a good thing. People who overestimate their capabilities often die early. At least it can help them recognize the gap between themselves and others in advance. As for whether he has any psychological problems, that's not what he should care about. If he can't bear this setback, then stop being a soul master and just go and lie down at home. Let's not talk about these boys. Do you think there is something wrong with the big forest? Ghost Douluo shook his head and looked into the distance with some worry. There is absolutely no way that the Linwu silkworm is the sole beast that appears on the edge, including the Millennium Wolf. Even though he was far away, the overwhelming green still occupied his entire field of vision. This magnificent green sea, which occupies an area close to the Balak Kingdom, is entrenched in the center of the continent and divides the Tiando Empire and the Star Luo Empire. So far, the center of the Great Forest is still the human Jedi. It is a forbidden area where even titled Douluo is very likely to fall. Yes, fortunately, we came out safely with these little beans. Ju Douluo was convinced. The appearance of soul beasts like the Linwu silkworm often means a big battle. If there really is a battle of that level, they don't care, but these little guys may not be able to protect them. But fortunately, it's okay now. Speaking of Su Chen, this guy. Hey, do you think I can have some of this Linwu silkworm? I heard that it's a good tonic, and it's a must-have for beauty and beauty. Quote. Yu Guan held her charming face, her eyes shining brightly. If it weren't for that obvious Adam's apple, everyone would think that he was a charming woman. You are so. Ghost Douluo looked at his old friend speechlessly, ignoring him, and there was still doubt in his eyebrows. The previous pope died not long ago, and the new pope just took office. There was already constant turmoil within the Wuhun palace. The three sects in the empire were eyeing her, and she could not allow anything extra to affect her energy. I hope nothing goes wrong in the Stardow forest. Snap, snap, blood flowed, and terrified whimpers echoed in the silence. The broken wolf beast lay shivering in a pool of blood, with a huge black claw comparable to its body pressing on its head. Ha, you're telling me that your tribe and that tonic were all killed by a little kid? A roar like a drum exploded in its ears, and the wolf screamed, blood spurted out of its ears, and it drooped weakly. What a waste. The black claw pressed down hard, and the wolf beast didn't even scream, and its entire body became a thin piece. A huge black shadow stood up in front of the corpse, blocking the huge hole created by Su Chen and blocking the falling sunlight, plunging the area into darkness again. What should we do? It's a supplement for your majesty. We've raised it for so long, and then let humans take it away. The sound of an urn came, and another black figure stood beside it. The saliva dripping from its mouth fell on the ground, igniting sparks one after another. The soil was quickly burned into a black crystal state by the high temperature. Humans. Boom. A huge roar exploded, and countless birds flew away. Countless weak soul beasts wailed and fell to the ground screaming. The huge black shadow with a radius of a kilometer had turned into a ruined land that was completely shattered by violence. I'm going to eat you. The black shadow looked up to the sky and roared, and countless soul beasts trembled. Well, Su Chen, it's time to eat. The girl carefully knocked on the car window. Almost the moment she spoke, Su Chen opened her eyes, and blood and white flashed in the young man's eyes. Juliana, who was outside, couldn't help feeling cold all over and shivering. At that moment, she felt as if she was being looked at from the inside out and locked tightly by a wild beast. Well, I understand, you go ahead. The boy's faint voice came from inside. It was obviously without any emotion, but Juliana felt relaxed all over, and the warmth of the sun returned to her body. Is that his current power? The girl was in a trance. It turns out that he is so powerful now. Obviously we all woke up together a few days ago, but we didn't expect that the distance now has become so far away. Okay, then hurry up. She sighed a little lowly and turned to leave. Su Chen in the carriage closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they turned into those dark and bright eyes again. He looked in the direction of the Stardow forest with some feeling. In a light sleep, Su Chen felt as if something powerful had locked onto him. When he was awakened, he could not control his own strength. Have you been targeted? It seems that I can't go to the Stardow Great Forest during this period of time. The young man murmured. He turned his eyes to the Linwu silkworm in the storage soul guide. It seems that you are an extraordinary soul beast. Getting off the carriage, feeling the comfortable warmth of the sun, the young man couldn't help stretching. The weather was sunny and the breeze was blowing. Wuhun City was already within reach. Perhaps because he was shocked by the changes in the Stardow Great Forest, he hurried back even faster, and forced the time to be advanced by another day. He almost solved the problem of eating, drinking and sleeping in the carriage. It was so urgent that even Su Chen felt a little tired, and couldn't help but take a nap. Seeing that Wuhun City was just around the corner, the two Douluo finally put down their worries, so they put the few people down, ate something good, washed up and had a good rest. After all, there was still a meeting with the Pope later, and they couldn't just go there in such a dusty state. After eating an extremely sumptuous meal, the little ones all showed happy smiles. Nothing is more soothing than delicious food after a long journey. Okay, after going back today, take a rest for a night. Tomorrow morning, it will be the same place. His Holiness the Pope will summon you. Weigui Douluo sent the few people to the city, gave a few instructions, and told the guards to send them home, and then the two hurriedly left. There were too many things that happened this time, and they were all very important, and they needed to be reported as soon as possible. The changes in the Xingdu Great Forest, the Linwu silkworm, the soul rings of several boys, and Su Chen. Exquisite body movements, clever use of soul power, miraculous dart throwing skills, the first soul ring of 1,000 years, and more than 4 powerful soul skills. Talented by nature, evil looking, no matter what adjectives, they can't describe the white-haired boy. Within 10 years, this boy will be famous in the continent. When thinking of this, Weigui Douluo couldn't help but get excited. But it turns out that Ju Ghost Douluo was happy too early. Perhaps it was the low-key and calm attitude of the white-haired boy along the way, as well as his polite attitude toward others, that made them subconsciously ignore certain established terrifying realities. For example, this child actually has level 15 soul power. For another example, this child is only 6 years old this year. As well as, ha 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 ha, did you too eat the poisonous mushrooms in the Stardow forest? Can a 3-year-old child say this even if you don't believe it? If something is too outrageous, no one will believe it unless they see it with their own eyes. Above the main square of Wuhun City, in the clouds, the extremely majestic main hall is located in it, resplendent and golden, looming in the clouds and mist, surrounded by huge palace buildings. The Pope's Palace, the sacred place in the hearts of all soul masters in Douluo continent. That is the supreme center of power, the pinnacle of strength, the orthodoxy of soul masters. At this moment, bursts of laughter came from this glorious hall. The clear floor was like a fine mirror, reflecting the flow patterns of the murals. The glazed tiles were very transparent, but not dazzling. Several people were divided into 2 rows and stood one after another. Even so, the hall still seemed a little empty. To keep the laughter echoing. 6 years old and level 15 soul power. 1,000-year soul ring, 4 soul skills, and proficient in so many skills, Yu Guan, Ghost. I think you two should stop being in charge of criminal law and make up stories. You are definitely good at it. Ha 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 ha, yes, you might as well say that he became a titled Douluo at the age of 16 and a god at the age of 18. It's almost the same anyway, ha 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 ha. Countless well-meaning, malicious, and even ridicules with ulterior motives followed one after another, and the air was filled with joy. Of course, as the 2 protagonists, they were in a bad mood. In the center of the hall, Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo stood there, the expressions on their faces extremely embarrassing. Seeing that the ridicule intensified, Yu Guan gritted his teeth, his snow-white neck flushed red, and finally couldn't help it, and said angrily, "Is that child so talented? You can tell at a glance. Do you think we will let it go? Is this a lie that can be exposed easily?" The ghost didn't speak, just nodded silently, and then secretly remembered those who laughed at them. His Majesty the Pope, I request to bring that child over now to show you what a true genius is. Yu Guan glanced at everyone with hatred, bowed his hands, and turned his gaze to the top, the beautiful woman leaning on the Pope's throne. The latter closed her eyes to rest, her long eyelashes trembling slightly, as if the ridicule and arguments present had nothing to do with her. No, Elder Ju, I am not a villain who can judge a gentleman's heart. It seems that some forbidden drugs can also achieve such effects, but the duration of such forbidden drugs usually does not last long. The speaker was a handsomely dressed young man. The young man didn't look very big, but he was wearing a light gray robe that represented worship. His left eye was covered with ice and snow, and he had a faint smile on his face. He glanced at Ju Douluo and said softly, "You." Yugon looked at the handsome young man angrily, gritted his teeth and said, "Elder Guangling, what do you mean?" Literally speaking, Elder Ju's ability to understand words needs to be improved. Young people should do what young people should do. Don't be too ambitious. You can only deceive yourself and not others. The latter smiled lightly, looked at the beautiful woman on the Pope's throne, and meant something. "Asshole, you." At this moment, Yu Guan wanted to punch his handsome face hard, but he also knew that this was impossible. Although he looks young, he is actually an old man in his 90s, and his strength and reputation are both above those of a young man like him. What's even more troublesome is that this old guy is a staunch supporter of the Seraphim lineage and has always been quite dissatisfied with the Pope's high position, and such people account for the vast majority in Wuhun Palace. If his hostility is too obvious, he will cause unnecessary trouble to His Majesty the Pope. The old guy who pretends to be young will die sooner or later. Cursing Guangling Douluo fiercely in his heart, Yu Guan took a deep breath and glanced at the other people in the hall, but a strange sneer appeared on his beautiful face. If he is really lying, His Majesty the Pope will definitely be questioned this time. But this time, you are going to be slapped in the face. What is he laughing at? Everyone present was a little confused. How can you still laugh in this situation? Lightling Douluo frowned, feeling slightly uneasy in his heart. Is it true? No, it's impossible. As a veteran titled Douluo, he also felt that Yu Guan was talking nonsense. It was not the prejudice of opposing factions. On the contrary, when he heard Zhu Douluo's description, he immediately deduced it over and over in his mind. Until he denied the last possibility, he decided to stand up and not let go of this good opportunity to criticize Bibi Dong. Not only had he read Su Chen's information, but he was also quite familiar with it. As one of the 3 most awakened people in the Wuhun Palace, the information had been sent to him early. From the first time the white-haired boy wet the bed to the time he started struggling to exercise, all the details were clearly investigated in the past few days, including Su Chen's father Su Xiao and his grandfather and ancestors. Looking around, there are 2 words, ordinary. My ancestors' martial arts spirits were ordinary, their strength was ordinary, and their family background was ordinary. Su Xiao was able to become a purple cardinal not because of his outstanding strength. To put it nicely, it was because he had enough experience. To put it bluntly, your family had been working for the Spirit Hall since your great-grandfather's generation, and they couldn't stand it anymore and gave you a purple cardinal. Perhaps it was because he had been working diligently all the time. When it came to Su Chen's generation, his spirit had a rare mutation. Guangling Douluo couldn't find out what it was. After all, the continent was so big that the Spirit Hall was not omnipotent. But the innate full soul power proved that it was not a weak spirit. That white-haired boy was indeed very smart since he was a child and liked to think about exercising himself. In general, he was a genius, and a rare precocious genius. But genius does not mean that he can be as outrageous as Zhu Douluo said. This simply subverted his cognition as a titled Douluo. Since you want to use this kid to enhance your prestige, I don't mind killing your spirit. If it weren't for the order of the old Pope, who are you to sit in that position? Guangling Douluo glanced at the beautiful woman on the Pope's throne, and a trace of disdain flashed in his eyes. Since Elder Zhu is so sure, then bring her here. Whether she has any tricks, I think it will not escape the eyes of the elders. A cold and lofty voice came from above and spread throughout the hall, and the noisy hall gradually quieted down. Bibi Dong's beautiful eyes were calm, and she stared at Guangling's sharp eyes. The depressing atmosphere instantly enveloped the hall, and everyone's face changed slightly, and they all lowered their heads. After a while, Guangling Douluo's eyes flashed, and he lowered his head on his own initiative. The Pope has the final say. However, I have to say this in advance, Elder Zhu, don't be a bluff. It's best to show what you said. He looked at Zhu Douluo, whose face was extremely ugly, and smiled faintly. In just a few words, all the retreats were blocked. You humph. Zhu Douluo could no longer suppress his anger, bowed to Bibi Dong, and walked out of the hall with Ghost Douluo without looking back. He was afraid that he would not be able to help but fight with this old man who pretended to be young. Young people just have no patience, don't you think so, Your Holiness? Guangling Douluo sighed helplessly, but his brows slightly frowned. Why do these 2 people look so confident? And Bibi Dong actually. He looked at the beautiful woman who continued to close her eyes and rest with some confusion. Even at this point, after he blocked all the back roads, he was not panicked at all. Could it be that the kid named Su Chen is really that powerful? No, it's impossible, that can't exist. Guangling Douluo exhaled lightly, shook his head, and confirmed his thoughts. It must be some kind of scam, humph, Bibi Dong, just wait to shoot yourself in the foot. When the Jigui Douluo found Su Chen, the latter had already rested. When Su Xiao came back in the afternoon, when he learned about his son's abilities, he almost fainted from excitement. He was comforted for a long time before he returned to normal. It just exhausted Su Chen. Even though he had been born in 2 lifetimes, he really didn't know how to comfort others. So, after Su Xiao calmed down, he breathed a sigh of relief. After all, resting during the day is not that good. The white-haired boy was really helpless when he was awakened by the excited and panicked Su Xiao, but when he saw the familiar duo in the living room, he suddenly understood what was going on. Please wait a moment. Before the eager Douluo could say anything, the young man nodded slightly, turned around and returned to the room. Douluo opened his mouth, originally wanting to urge, but looking at the young man's unhurried back, somehow, his restless heart slowly calmed down. After thinking about it, he and Ghost Douluo sat down and waited quietly. Oh, this kid, sir, please wait a moment, I'll call him right now. This made Su Xiao anxious. After pouring the tea, he quickly got up and went to call Su Chen. Does this kid know who these two are? Not only is he a well-known strong man in the mainland, but he is also a popular person next to the new pope. If he gets connected, wouldn't he be able to rise to prominence in the spirit hall in the future? This is a big shot that you can't even try to ingratiate yourself with. I just don't quite understand why such a big shot came to his home looking for Ah Chen so late. It couldn't be that Ah Chen alerted the Pope, right? It doesn't matter, we just wait. Douluo reached out to hold him and shook his head. Seeing the big shot like this, Su Xiao had no choice but to sit down in embarrassment. Fortunately, Su Chen didn't keep them waiting for too long. After a while, the young man wiped his steamy hair and walked out. The three of them looked at each other. Douluo was stunned and looked at Su Chen in surprise, who had changed into decent clothes and finished washing. Do you know where we are going? Well, if nothing else happens, we should meet with the Pope in advance. We can discuss the specific issues on the way. The young man nodded, handed the towel to Su Xiao who was stunned at the side, and walked out first. Douluo looked at each other and followed suit. Only Su Xiao stayed there stupidly, looking at the towels and then at the backs of several people. Really, did you really alarm the Pope? That's what I said it would be. Douluo said somewhat seriously. So, you need to show your abilities with all your strength, and the best thing you can do is be more exaggerated. Ghost Douluo also nodded. No danger, however, no. But before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by a white-haired boy. His dark eyes looked at Douluo and Ghost Douluo, word by word. There must be danger. The two of them were stunned for a moment, and then their expressions changed drastically. You mean? Su Chen nodded. Yes, if nothing else happens, he should find someone to spar with me, and then take the opportunity to get seriously injured, or simply. The white-haired boy did not continue, but the other two people present understood what he meant. Old thing. Douluo cursed angrily. Based on his understanding of Guangling Douluo, this kind of thing is not possible, but the probability is extremely high. The situation is now at an impasse. It was absolutely impossible to send Su Chen there even though he knew he was in danger. Ruining a future peerless genius just for the sake of a momentary dispute was what only a fool would do. But if you just retreat like this, Yu Guan himself is not afraid of making things difficult and punishing him, but he is afraid that His Majesty the Pope will find it even more difficult as a result. For a moment, Douluo was in a dilemma. Let me take full responsibility. His Majesty the Pope will not blame me if he finds out. After hesitating for a moment, Yu Guan gritted his teeth and said, no matter what, we can't let anything happen to Su Chen. Let's bear it together, otherwise you may lose more than just your position on the judicial team. The ghost shook his head, looking at the white-haired boy's calm and composed look, his heart moved. Su Chen, what can you do? Although he felt that putting this kind of pressure on a 6-year-old child was a bit insane, the evil figure displayed by the other party was definitely not just about cultivation. He could analyze the deeper plan of Lightling Douluo with just a few words. Maybe, there will be some good solution. Yes, yes. Su Chen nodded. Ghost Douluo and Douluo's eyes lit up when they heard this. This kid keeps creating surprises. Could it be that this time? Then do nothing, let's go over and accept this competition. The white-haired boy's black eyes shone with calmness as he looked at the two of them. There's no need to mention it again. Don't you understand? You are much more important than this dispute of will. Douluo interrupted him angrily and waved his hand. The worst is punishment and loss of face. Sooner or later you will earn it back. If you are seriously injured or simply die, where can you find Su Chen? Old ghost, send him back and let him sleep well. Ghost Douluo sighed, but saw a faint smile on the white-haired boy. 2 adults, let me ask, will the people he sends out to test surpass Soul Lord? Su Chen is in a good mood now. Raising that possibility, in addition to telling the two the truth, also meant testing. If they still asked him to take the lead without hesitation, then Su Chen would have to consider whether to cooperate with Bibi Dong, because from a long-term perspective, it would be very stupid to destroy a genius. He could tolerate his companion's cold-bloodedness, but he could not tolerate short-sightedness and stupidity. Subordinates are the extension of the will of the superiors. Obviously, the reactions of Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo made him very satisfied. Therefore, Su Chen did not mind helping a little in advance. Nonsense, it will definitely not exceed Soul Master. Do you still want to use Soul Master to deal with a Soul Master? Yu Guan replied unhappily, but his face changed halfway through. You mean, yes. The white-haired boy smiled and nodded. Do you think I'm afraid of a Soul Master? This sounded a bit arrogant. But Ju and Ghost Douluo sadly found that there seemed to be no way to refute it. This person has killed 2,000-year soul beasts. But combat experience. Okay, just ignore what I said. Ju Douluo wanted to give some advice, but found that he had said something nonsense. The gap in strength cannot be compared with combat experience. No matter how experienced a soul master is, he can't kill a 1,000-year-old silkworm and a 1,000-year-old wolf with its tribe alive. How can this kid be so evil? Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo grinned with some toothache. I found a solution, but I don't know why, I'm not very happy. It's really uncomfortable to have your IQ and talent crushed by a 6-year-old child. But when he thought about seeing Guang Ling's expression of eating shit, Douluo couldn't help getting excited again. Just wait, old thing. I'm here with a big killer to smack your face. Your Majesty, the whereabouts of the Haoshan sect are unknown, and Tang Hao has also lost his trace. The law enforcement team is stepping up the search, but, Your Majesty, I think we should attack the Haoshan sect directly. Tang Hao is so bold that he must have been instructed by the Haoshan sect. Do you have a brain? The attitude of the Qibao Luli sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex is ambiguous, and Tiando and Xinglo are eyeing them covetously. If we go to war with the Haoshan sect, do you think they will miss this good opportunity? Humph. According to you, our Wuhun Hall Pope has been beaten to death by others, and we still have to swallow our anger. How will the world view our Wuhun Hall? You old man is unreasonable. When did I say that I should swallow my anger? It's just that this matter needs to be considered in the long run. Bah, in the Pope's palace, the heated discussion is still going on, but it's a different topic. Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo just brought a small episode. The largest soul master organization on this continent will not waste too much time on a genius who has not yet grown up. Enough. The cold and incomparable voice with anger suppressed all the quarrels. The peerless beauty sitting on the Pope's throne frowned, her lips slightly pursed, as if she was trying her best to suppress her anger and pain. Her beautiful eyes swept across the people present, and everyone she was looking at couldn't help but feel a chill rising from their backs. The people who had just been arguing with red faces and thick necks suddenly quieted down, and some of them didn't dare to look into her eyes. The beautiful woman took a deep breath and issued her orders in an orderly manner. 6th priest, 7th priest, you go to the 7 Treasures Glazed sect and invite sect master Ning to watch the ceremony and participate in the Pope's succession ceremony. 2 middle-aged men with powerful momentum stood up and saluted. Your Majesty's order. Then, she turned her eyes to the other 2. Elder Porcupine, Ghost Leopard, you 2 go to the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex and ask the Jade Clan leader to come to my Wuhun Hall to watch the ceremony. Yes, I obey Your Majesty's order. Another 2 people stood up and bowed their hands to accept the order. As for the Haoshan sect, Bibi Dong narrowed her beautiful eyes, opened her red lips slightly, and said coldly. Hand over Tang Hao within 7 days, otherwise, let them disappear on their own. As soon as these words came out, the whole hall was shocked. Everyone took a breath of cold air. This is to force the other 2 sects of the upper 3 sects to stand in line. Pope, don't do that, now is not the time to start a war rashly, now. An elder hurriedly stood up, but before he finished speaking, he was glanced at by the beautiful eyes on the high seat, and he couldn't say anything and stood back with a gloomy expression. The person who wanted to say something could only quietly retract his steps. Everyone knows that the former pope is the mentor of the new pope. His Majesty must be very sad about his death. Who dares to offend her at this time? No one noticed that the beautiful woman on the high seat had a barely perceptible smile on her lips. It would be impossible to make this group of people obey normally. Although the beast is dead, it is not completely useless. Just treat it as the remaining heat of the beast. Your Holiness, I think this is inappropriate. However, in the quiet Pope's hall, a sudden voice of opposition suddenly sounded. Everyone looked at it in surprise, wanting to see who dared to oppose His Holiness at this time. When they saw the figure clearly, they immediately understood. The smile of the beautiful woman suddenly froze, the pink fist in her long sleeves clenched tightly, her beautiful eyes looked deeply at the young face, but she felt unspeakable disgust in her heart. Do you have any good ideas? She forced a smile and asked softly. Elder Guangling. The latter seemed to sigh helplessly, with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Your Majesty, you are still too young. What if the Seven Treasures Glazed Sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex are unwilling to come? Do we have to go to war with the three sects at the same time? The old Pope is willing to support you to ascend to the throne of the Pope, but it does not mean that you can do whatever you want. If you follow your idea, then the soul masters of my Wuhun Hall will suffer heavy losses. This hypocritical look made Bibi Dong feel sick, but she knew that it was not the time to turn against him. A Guangling is nothing, but behind him are the most loyal supporters of the six-winged angel lineage. The fourth worshipper, Lion Douluo, and the second worshipper, Golden Crocodile Douluo, who is second only to the great worshipper Qian Daoliu. That is a behemoth that she cannot shake at all at this stage. Thinking of this, Bibi Dong could only suppress her anger and asked, can we go to war with Houshan sect alone and the other two sects just sit back and watch? The ambitions of Qibao Luli and Blue Dot Tyrannosaurus Rex are obvious. If we don't take the opportunity to force them to express their opinions, will they stab us in the back after the war? Of course not. Guangling Douluo showed a confident smile. In an emergency, it's not a bad idea for us to be more gentle. We have to avenge Houshan sect, but we don't have to become enemies with the other two sects quickly, right? In the name of my Wuhun Hall, we will use both kindness and force. Qibao Luli and Blue Lightning Tyrannosaurus Rex will surely be grateful and stop interfering in this matter. In this way, how many fewer soldiers will be mobilized and how many fewer people will die? Seemingly very satisfied with his own words, he glanced around, and the people around him understood and complimented him. What a great idea, Elder Guangling. That's right, that's right. In this way, I'm afraid that no soul master will have to die, and these problems can be perfectly solved. Your Highness, the Pope's move is indeed a little ill-considered. Listening to the continuous voices of approval around her, Bibi Dong finally couldn't help it and her face turned ugly. Old thing. Not only did he completely deny her plan, but he also used this to imply that she began to despise the lives of low-level soul masters after becoming the Pope. There is no doubt that once this statement spreads, her reputation will be severely hit. Oh, you don't have to say that. Your Highness, the Pope is just a little young and inexperienced. Otherwise, he wouldn't listen to the nonsense of Guiju and the other two guys, right? Seeing that everyone around had said almost everything, Guangling finally smiled at the silent and beautiful woman, and a hint of pride flashed in his one eye. As long as His Holiness listens to our opinions more in the future, he will definitely grow up quickly, don't you think so, His Holiness? Bibi Dong clenched her fist tightly, and her red lips were almost bitten by her teeth. She knew that this was Guangling's condition. Let go of the condition that hit her prestige. The price is to share the current right to speak and give up the genius and the second Douluo of Ghost and Chrysanthemum. Bibi Dong's murderous intent surged in her heart, but soon she sadly discovered that although her future achievements would definitely surpass these old things, she was not Guangling Douluo's opponent at all. The right to speak doesn't matter. Anyway, it is restricted everywhere now, but Ghost Douluo and Chrysanthemum Douluo are loyal to her. If she gives up, it will definitely chill the hearts of the two. But if she doesn't give up, won't the prestige and reputation that she has worked so hard to build for so long be wasted? This is a naked conspiracy. Clipped wings, slowly sidelined, or completely lose the support of the lower-level soul masters. Instant death and slow death. It seems that there is only one choice left in front of her. Is it really necessary to give up Ghost Douluo and Chrysanthemum Douluo? And that Su Chen. A pair of bright black eyes flashed through Bibi Dong's mind, and she sighed in her heart. Try again, if it doesn't work, then. Your Holiness, we are back. Just as she hesitated and struggled, Chrysanthemum Douluo's soft and loud voice suddenly resounded in the hall. The sudden voice broke the silence in the hall and interrupted Bibi Dong's thinking. She exhaled lightly and calmed her expression. Come in. Since there is no choice, it is better to trust Yu Guan. Besides, thinking back to those calm and bright black eyes, she felt a little relieved. Perhaps, there will be some surprises. But compared with Bibi Dong, Guangling's mood is not so beautiful. Just now, I clearly saw that this woman was about to compromise, but was interrupted by that boy. Now it seems that this woman seems to be hesitant again. HMPH. Guangling Douluo sneered secretly and looked at the door. Since Bibi Dong, you don't know what's good for you and still try to struggle with this absurd thing, don't blame me for being rude. Time goes back to 1 minute ago. How about it? Stunned, right? When I first saw it, I was also shocked for a long time. Zhu Douluo looked at the slightly stunned white-haired boy, proudly pointed at the Pope's palace, with an indescribable pride in his tone. This is the place that all soul masters in the continent yearn for, as long as they can have a place in it. Ghost Douluo's eyes were also full of longing. Yeah, it's really shocking. Su Chen seemed to have just reacted and nodded in admiration. Hey, why do you seem to be not so shocked? Aren't you stunned? Zhu Douluo looked at Su Chen suspiciously. Why do I feel that this kid is a bit perfunctory? No, this palace is really very superior. Okay, sir, let's go in quickly. Su Chen smiled and said. He didn't lie. This palace, whether in terms of craftsmanship or style, is among the best even with his knowledge. But how shocking it is. For a person who uses Susano with bare hands, beats foxes all day long, and occasionally goes to the wet-bone forest to see slugs, it's just that. So, it's really hard for him to show shock. As for why he was stunned just now, it was because the immortal's super perception allowed him to hear some very interesting information on the other side of the door. I didn't expect that Bibi Dong would be so frustrated. The boy thought for a while and quickly revised his plan. Well, let's go in. Zhu Douluo scratched his head, always feeling that there was something wrong with what the child said, but it didn't matter, it was still important to go in. Pushing open the door, Yu Guan couldn't wait to shout, and the boy's eyes passed through the layers of scrutiny and stayed on the farthest and highest position, the graceful figure. Under the gilded crown inlaid with purple gems, there is a pretty face that can be called stunning. The snow-white skin is so delicate that it can be blown away. The facial features are delicate as if they were carved by nature. It is charming but not coquettish, gorgeous but not vulgar, and the long pink hair with gradient color falls casually, which is beautiful beyond description. The purple and gold Pope's robe can't hide the graceful figure at all. The curves are well proportioned, the body is exquisite, and the slender legs overlap. Noble and cold coexist. In the arms that are as white as frost and snow, she quietly leans on a purple and gold scepter, showing the luxurious color. Bibi Dong, the biggest villain in the first part of Douluo continent, and the most beautiful woman officially designated. It really lives up to her reputation. Su Chen sighed in his heart. As if noticing the naked gaze of the boy, Bibi Dong's beautiful eyes also looked over. There was curiosity, indifference, and a hint of deep madness in it. Su Chen understood why. Now, she is at the lowest point in her life. She devoured her beastly master with her own hands, and was abandoned by Yu Shaogang, who had no responsibility. Even if she became the Pope, it was difficult. But who would have thought that this woman would almost unify the Douluo continent in the future, and even sent the destined protagonist Tang San to the Hall of Death. But she has someone in heaven to protect her, and she will be resurrected in a short time. In short, this is a very dangerous woman. But she is also a very pitiful woman. Say she is a good person, at first glance it seems to be quite bad, but if you think about it carefully, there are really few things that can be called bad. Overthrowing the feudal empire and unifying the continent is bad. Looking at the messy ghost after 10,000 years, you can know that unification has more advantages than disadvantages. Moreover, the empire ruled the continent, and even the welfare of free martial soul awakening for ordinary people is gone, not to mention the subsidy for receiving soul coins. Is the feud with the three sects bad? His enemy is my hero. With different positions, how can we simply define good and bad? As for Tang San's family, forget it. No matter how much love between husband and wife and mother and son there is, in the final analysis, aren't they just soul beasts? There's nothing wrong with soul masters hunting soul beasts, right? When the double-standard God King was killing the deep-sea demon whale king, why didn't he think that he was also the husband of a female whale and the father of a little whale? So, Bibi Dong talked about destroying the world every day, but he really didn't do a single bad thing, unlike Obito next door. He said he would destroy the world, but he really did it. After he turned evil, he started killing his master and mistress, and the sins he committed were really countless. Compared with him, Bibi Dong was really child's play. Such people, in a sense, are all very simple. Becoming an enemy is an extremely terrible enemy, but if you become a companion, you are also a trustworthy companion. So, Su Chen planned to help her once. Light Ling Douluo frowned and looked at the three figures, two large and one small. After glaring at Yu Guan, he focused his attention on the smallest white-haired figure in the middle. Is this kid Su Chen? He has a tall and straight body, a delicate face, and is still calm in the face of so many people. Regardless of his talent, this psychological quality is indeed good. Judging from this alone, he is a rare genius, not to mention that it is indeed a certainty that he will be born with full soul power. Light Ling Douluo nodded appreciatively in his heart. He decided to tell his men to be gentle and wait until Bibi Dong's prestige had plummeted before bringing this boy to the angel lineage for training. Apart from this, there are still a few left, and he plans to bring back the Seraphim lineage. Thinking that all geniuses belong to Seraphim, Light Feather Douluo was very happy. He cleared his throat and showed a kind smile, but before he could open his mouth to win over, the white-haired boy spoke first. Well, I was just outside the palace and seemed to hear the plan for the Seven Treasures Glazed Sect and the Blue Electric Tyrannosaurus Rex. Can I ask who said it? The young man's words caused the faces of everyone present to change, and they all looked at him in surprise. What's going on? Wasn't this child brought by Yu Guan? Why are you starting to flatter Light Ling Douluo? Rebellious. Everyone looked at the livid Jew Douluo with schadenfreude. The actor they had worked so hard to find actually started to flatter Elder Guangling. This was really funny. Guangling's face showed an expression of extreme satisfaction. It seems that this guy is very knowledgeable. Little one, what do you think of this plan? Guangling Douluo's supporters stood up and asked impatiently, while raising their eyebrows at Ghost Jew Douluo. All eyes were focused on him instantly. Faced with so many gazes, the white-haired boy hesitated to speak. It's okay, little guy, don't worry, no one here can stop you from expressing any opinions. Light Ling Douluo waved his hand domineeringly. That's fine. The young man nodded, a smile appearing on his delicate face. I want to say, does the person who proposed this plan have a brain problem? Is the person who proposed this plan mentally ill? Under the watchful eyes of most of the higher-ups of Wuhun Palace, the young man said these words so lightly. The whole place was dead silent. Everyone present, whether they were elders or priests, opened their mouths in shock, and Jew Douluo and Ghost Douluo even took a breath of cold air. Even Bibi Dong, who was sitting on the Pope's throne, couldn't help but tremble and her beautiful eyes widened. This boy, you actually said in front of Light Ling Douluo that there was something wrong with his mind. Come on, are you kidding me? Even the old Pope was polite when he met this man. That is the four enshrinements of Wuhun Palace, one of the most powerful people in this continent. The smile on Light Ling Douluo's face gradually stiffened. For a moment, he suspected that he had heard wrong. Have you been scolded? How many years, has no one dared to scold themselves in front of their faces? Now, being scolded by a 6-year-old child for having a brain problem. Boy, you'd better have a reason that satisfies me, otherwise. Light Ling Douluo suppressed the killing intent in his heart, the ice crystals in his eyes began to tremble and fall, and he stared coldly at the innocent-looking boy. Just tell your men to attack with all their strength later. Let this kid spend his next life in bed. My lord, can't you see that? I thought you were a smart man. The white-haired boy spread his hands helplessly and looked at Guangling Douluo with pity in his eyes. Hiss. Everyone present took a deep breath, and Ju Douluo and Ghost Douluo were even more heartbroken, wanting to rush forward and cover Su Chen's mouth. I said, "White-haired boy, this is not part of our plan. It's not enough for you to lift the tiger's beard once, and now you're standing on his head plucking his hair. This is not how you seek death. Okay, boy, you are very good. I would like to hear what opinions you have, if you can't tell me." Light Ling Douluo laughed angrily and said 3 good words in a row. The handsome young man's face was filled with a cold haze. Even with his self-cultivation, he couldn't help being looked up to by a child with an expression of pity. He has decided to let this kid die later. I can't speak of opinions, just some ideas. Su Chen shrugged, and his black eyes swept across the crowd. I would like to ask you all, if a country has been the leader of all nations since ancient times, and accepts worship and tribute from the surrounding people, it will be powerful in the world. So, when a smaller country takes offense, what should this country do? Some elders disagreed. Of course the thunder struck and destroyed it. But as soon as he said it, he remembered something and quickly shut up. Very good, this gentleman is very smart. But Su Chen wouldn't just let him go. The white-haired boy looked at him with a smile. What if that small country kills its king? At this point, everyone still doesn't understand that what this country represents is the Wuhun Palace. And that small country is naturally the Haoshan sect. Old, I think it should be destroyed. The elder who spoke turned pale, and his lips moved and he could not say a word. Because opposite him, an extremely cold one eye was staring at him. Very good, very good. You are indeed worthy of being the elder of Wuhun Palace. Su Chen nodded with satisfaction and looked at everyone again. Look, you know, I know, other small countries also know, and they are all waiting for the country to use thunder to destroy all unstable factors that dare to offend, not to mention such a life and death hatred. In this case, instead of taking action quickly, the country tried to win over allies from other small countries. What does this mean? The boy's voice was very soft, but it hit everyone's heart like a heavy hammer. What does it mean? It means that you are no longer able to become this overlord. It will become a target for other countries to bite. Perhaps bowing down can save many soul masters from the risk of death, but it will also bury endless troubles in the future. There will be countless challengers to resist the overlord authority. The young man's voice was clear, but it was like spring thunder on his tongue. It made everyone sweat profusely and breathless, but they suddenly understood. Seeing that no one said anything, the young man looked at the livid-faced Light Ling Douluo and blinked. Sir, you haven't told me yet who is the person who proposed this stupid plan. My 6-year-old child can see things, but he can't see it, and it's a shame. So, I suggest that the person who said this sentence be expelled from Wuhun Palace, otherwise Wuhun Palace will be dragged into the abyss by a stupid decision one day in the future. You think so? Ju Douluo and Gui almost fainted from fear. Are you brave enough to scold me in front of your face? What does this mean? Killing someone but also killing your heart. Are you really not afraid that he will kill you with one slap? I really don't have time to save this. On the papal throne, Bibi Dong leaned forward, clenching her pink fists excitedly, her beautiful eyes shining unblinkingly at the white-haired boy in the crowd. Su Chen's words could be said to have spoken to her heart. And looking at Guangling's livid face, the Pope felt as happy and refreshed as if he drank an iced drink in summer. His long and beautiful legs were crossed, and an intoxicating smile appeared on his beautiful face. She just felt extremely happy. No matter what, she was determined to have this child, and she had to keep him. Even if she had to go to Qian Daoliu and make a scene, she would not hesitate. Guangling Douluo's chest rose and fell violently, his facial muscles twitched, his expression was ferocious, and he had lost his previous handsome appearance. Ju Douluo was right, Guangling really wanted to kill this kid. But this was impossible, not to mention that more than 4 auras had locked onto him from the beginning. Guangling had a hunch that as long as he made a slight move, even if he released a little aura of oppression, someone would stop him. Moreover, if he really killed the future genius of the Spirit Hall in public, or because he was angry, the Spirit Hall would not tolerate him at all. Guangling Douluo, who had calmed down a little, restrained his killing intent and felt extremely aggrieved. Being scolded was fine, but the key was that he had no way to refute it. No matter how much he resisted in his heart, he understood that his way would indeed bring disaster to the spirit hall. But being taught by a 6-year-old child, even if this kid is a genius, is a disgrace to him. He seemed to be able to see the trembling figures around him. Are they laughing at him? This fool. Humph, kid, don't forget the business. I hope your strength can be as sharp as your tongue. Wang Ling looked coldly at the black-eyed white-haired boy, and a cruel smile flashed across his mouth. I hope you can still be as proud as you are now. It is not convenient for him to take action, but it does not mean that others cannot. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Yes, no matter how good his eloquence is, strength is the first priority. The highlight is to see if he is as evil as described by Zhu Douluo and Gui Douluo. Then everyone, please move to the square. You can tell whether you are a dragon or a snake at a glance. A clear and cold voice came from above. His Holiness the Pope slowly stood up, and his graceful figure was perfectly displayed under the Pope's robe. He gently held the scepter in his jade hand, and walked over with a swaying figure. Everyone bowed their heads and made way for him wherever he went. When she passed by Su Chen, she slowly stopped, leaned over, and a beautiful smile appeared on her pretty face. Little guy, after this test, come to see me alone, and I can meet one of your requests. If you win, there will be a reward. The refreshing fragrance came to his face, and the boy could feel the sweet breath between the red lips and pearly teeth blowing on his face. Su Chen frowned slightly, took a step back, and distanced himself from Bibi Dong, and bowed slightly. Thank you, Your Holiness the Pope, I won't let you down. Just talk, why is this woman so close? Bibi Dong's breathing stagnated. Obviously, the boy's reaction was completely beyond her expectations. I am being despised. His Holiness the Pope was somewhat stunned. Which of the young men and women in the spirit hall would not flock to me when they see me? Putting aside my status and strength, just in terms of appearance, no one in this world can ignore me. Bibi Dong has this confidence. But the boy's half-step back and frown were not artificial, but he was unwilling to get close from the bottom of his heart. This is really the first time. His Holiness the Pope's mouth curled up slightly, and he became more interested in Su Chen. Spirit Hall, the square in front of the Pope's hall. The moon was bright and the stars were shining. There was not a single cloud in the clear night sky. The fog that lingered around the Spirit Hall had also dissipated a lot. Standing here, you could still see the lights of thousands of households in the Spirit City. Show it here. Bibi Dong smiled faintly on her delicate face, and pointed with her jade hand. I'm looking forward to your performance. The high-level officials of the Spirit Hall stood around in twos and threes, their eyes shuttled back and forth between the noble and beautiful figure and the white-haired boy, their eyes full of curiosity and exploration. Originally, such a small matter only required 2 people to stare and verify, but the Pope came out first, so what was the matter with them not coming out? This was the first time I saw the new Pope value a person so much. Thinking of the outstanding performance of the boy in the hall just now, they were a little skeptical at the moment, who had sneered at Zhu Douluo's words at first. The eyes of the quick-witted people flickered, and they had already made other plans. Wait, His Holiness the Pope. Guangling Douluo stood up again, regaining his extraordinary demeanor, with a smile on his handsome face, completely different from the angry and twisted him just now. It's hard to convince people if it's just a demonstration. How about I add some prizes? Here it comes. Everyone was excited, knowing that this worshipper would not give up. Oh, His Holiness frowned slightly. What does Guangling worshipper want to add? Buzz. A hidden soul power fluctuation flashed. Guangling Douluo waved his hand lightly, and a dark red crystal appeared in his hand. That is. Zhu Douluo narrowed his eyes slightly, then his face changed, and he said in surprise, Soul Bone. Soul Bone. Su Chen was shocked when he heard the name, and couldn't help but look over. The whole body was dark red, crystal clear, and a hot and strong breath flowed in it, like a beautiful work of art. It is indeed a treasure of soul masters. Even though Su Chen cannot see anything due to his low soul power, he can feel that once he absorbs this soul bone, his physique and soul power will be greatly improved. In addition, he seems to have sensed a familiar and strange breath in it, but he is not sure. If it is really that kind of thing, this soul bone must be taken. Hiss, judging from its color and soul power fluctuations, it is probably a soul bone of at least 9,000 years, or even 10,000 years. Looking at this shape, is it the right leg bone? It is worthy of being the Guangling worshipper. He actually took out the 10,000-year soul bone directly. Everyone was surprised and talked about it. 10,000-year soul bones are extremely rare, and even for the titled Douluo, it is a treasure that greatly improves. If it is placed in the outside world, it is enough to fight for blood and cause a bloody storm. But Guangling Douluo actually took it out like this as a prize for a show. Everyone smelled the unusual meaning in it. Your Holiness, how about this prize? The handsome young Guangling Douluo smiled and gently placed the soul bone on the stone platform in front. Elder Guangling is really generous, but it's a bit too expensive to take out a 10,000-year soul bone for such a childish play. The Pope's red lips moved slightly, and his beautiful eyes looked deeply at Guangling Douluo. Why don't you tell me first, how do you plan to show this little guy? She did not agree, or rather, she had begun to find ways to refuse. Guangling Douluo was willing to take out such a thing. I'm afraid he was prepared to make it impossible for Su Chen to get it. It's very simple. The handsome young man in a light gray robe blinked, and the ice flowers on his single eye flew off, causing the temperature around him to drop a few degrees. He smiled and raised a finger, revealing his white teeth. 1 stick of incense. As long as this child can hold out for 1 stick of incense under his attack, no matter what, this soul bone of the 10,000-year spirit fire fox is his. After saying that, Guangling Douluo clapped his hands, and a tall middle-aged man walked out from behind him with his head down. How is it? Guangling Douluo looked at Bibi Dong, and finally stopped his gaze on Su Chen. Zhu Douluo frowned and felt it for a while, then his face changed drastically, and he held Su Chen behind him, and couldn't help but said angrily, "You are so shameless to use a soul sect to test a soul master." Soul sect. Everyone was in an uproar, and their eyes went over one after another. After a moment, they looked at Guangling Douluo with a strange look on their faces. It's really a soul sect. No wonder he dared to take out the 10,000-year soul bone, isn't it too shameless? This is no longer a question of whether he can get it, this is to let this child die. Didn't you say that this kid has a 1,000-year soul ring? It just so happens that my subordinate has average talent, and the 4th ring is only 1,000 years old. Besides, it's only for an incense stick of time, and it's not defeated. For a genius whose 1st ring is 1,000 years old, there shouldn't be any problem, right? Besides, Guangling Douluo's smiling expression suddenly turned cold, and his huge and turbulent momentum suddenly rushed towards Zhu Douluo. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like this? The high-level titled Douluo, the 5th worshipper of the Spirit Hall, suddenly revealed his terrifying power. Puff! Caught off guard, Zhu Douluo's face turned pale, and he spit out a large mouthful of blood. His breath instantly weakened, and his steps staggered. If it weren't for the ghost Douluo who reacted and hurried forward to release his momentum to resist for a moment, Yu Guan would probably fall directly to the ground. Insolent. An even greater wave of soul power emerged, blocking Light Ling Douluo's momentum. Ghost Douluo, who was struggling to resist, suddenly relaxed and almost fell to the ground. Su Chen, on the other hand, was not affected at all under the deliberate protection of several people. Is this the strength of a high-level titled Douluo? It really shouldn't be underestimated. The young man's face was a little serious. It seems that we need to focus on taking precautions against this person. The beautiful eyes under the Pope's crown were full of cold evil aura, her long pink hair was fluttering in the wind, and a huge spider loomed behind her, exuding an extremely terrifying aura. Elder Guangling, what do you mean? Click. The hard masonry screamed under the impact of the pure momentum, and dense cracks gradually spread. However, when the power reached the critical point, it involuntarily stopped. The confrontation between the two sides slowly dissipated, and the onlookers wiped the cold sweat on their heads and breathed a sigh of relief. One is the new pope, the other is an old supporter of the angelic lineage. If these two people really fight, they really don't know what to do. I'm sorry, His Majesty the Pope, you just taught a lesson to the younger generation who don't know their dignity. This woman has become so much stronger. She's still so young. Guang Ling cupped her hands, a trace of fear flashed in her one eye. I hope this never happens again. Bibi Dong said coldly. Besides, this kid won't compete with your soul sect. You know this old guy has no good intentions. You actually have the nerve to say such shameless words. The fourth ring is the millennium, the first three are just decorations, right? Wait a minute, His Majesty the Pope, do I think we should ask the person concerned for his opinion on this matter? Light Ling Douluo hid his gloom and looked at Su Chen with a smile. How about it, are you willing? From just now, he noticed that this young man had been staring closely at the soul bone in his hand. That's right, even a titled Douluo cannot remain unmoved when faced with a 10,000-year-old soul bone, let alone a child. As expected, he heard Su Chen's answer. Of course I do. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.